Hi, everyone, and welcome back to that UFO podcast. I've got an interview today, but also with some breaking news, so we're going to get straight into it. Joining me to discuss the upcoming UAP hearings, I have the Executive Director of the Paradigm Research Group, political activist, researcher, and disclosure advocate for his must be seventh or eighth appearance at this point. I've got Stephen Bassett. Steve, welcome back.
It's good to be with you, Andy.
It's good to have you on. And literally minutes before we were hitting the record button, we had some big news dropping where we're coming on to preview the hearings due on the 9th of September over in Washington. But we now have the list of names, Steve, which have dropped as we speak. And I'm just going to run through those very quickly for people listening because I'm going to get this interview up and out pretty quickly. So on Tuesday,
Andy, what site are you
yeah, go
looking
on.
at that's got the
So I've got multiple ones open here. They're on X. I've got the Oversight House, the actual link, but any number of different ones. The oversight.house.gov.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me see if I can get that up so I can go because I just obviously I didn't know. I mean, it happened just before we were going to go on.
It's literally minutes before, folks. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay, oversight subcommittee task force. Let's see if that works. Uh, well, that's the committee. I don't want that. So I'm going to go to oversighthouse.gov.
tell you what, if you go into the chat for this video, I've put the link in the chat.
If I can do that, let's see. Where is the chat room? Oh, I see chat.
Right hand
Okay,
side.
excellent.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep, that's the link.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Thank you. Technology is pretty cool, isn't it? What we can do
It
now.
is, and this is how fresh this news is, folks. That literally, as we're hitting record, this stuff just kind of dropped online. So yeah, some interesting news. And Steve, just while you pull that up, I'm going to run through the names for folks listening. So the hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, the 9th of September at 10 a.m. Eastern. So that's about 3 p.m. in the UK. It will be held in the Capitol Visitor Centre. And the witnesses confirmed are Jeffrey Nuccitelli, US Air Force veteran. Jeff is relatively well known. He's done quite a few podcasts on the Vandenberg Air Force incident, including being on with myself. Chief Alexandro Wiggins, he is a UAP witness. He was on Weaponized episode number 73, and we'll go over his sighting in just a moment. George Knapp is a name that most folks, I am sure, will be very familiar with. UAP journalist extraordinaire. And Dylan Borland, UAP witness, US Air Force veteran. For me, the least well known of any of the names. I'm not too familiar with Mr. Borland at all. But Steve, I suppose we're getting fresh initial reactions from yourself on those names.
Uh, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. Capitol Visitors, that's not a hearing room. That is a big place. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the potential audience could be, let's see, uh, hundreds and hundreds. Okay, let me just see the photos here. Oh my God, yes. It is a huge area. And so it could easily have hundreds and hundreds of audience. Now that is intentional. They are looking to really make an impression here. Obviously, they could easily. Well, initially there was an announcement was going to be in some hearing room in the Rayburn, but they could easily get a hearing room. There's no question. But they're anticipating a vast interest in this. And so they've moved it into a huge facility. And so I am guessing we could have an audience of 2, 3, 4, 500 people unless they confine it. All right. So Capitol Visitor Center is clearly a move by the Secrets Task Force to have maximum impact off of this hearing. All right. And so if it's 10 a.m., all right, it's going to be people are going to have to get there pretty early if they want to be, how would you say, well situated. But I am not familiar with the Capitol Visitor Center. I will go down there, I assure you, before the 9th, look it over completely. But I'm excited by this. This is going to get a huge amount of coverage. It's going to be live streamed. So that's the first thing that needs to be said about this. Again, I just found out, folks. So, and I owe this to Andy. If he hadn't been paying attention, we wouldn't even have been talking about it. Now, as far as the four witnesses, Three of them I have very little. Again, it's it's not possible to keep up with all the witnesses that are coming forward, and that's less important than the fact that they're coming forward. So I do not know much about three of them, but I know a lot about one of them, and that is George Knapp. So what has happened here? They're bringing on one of the top journalists on this field, going back further than anybody else doing journalism on this that's still alive. I don't think anybody compares. He has an unbelievable, I guess you could say, portfolio of interviews and actual research into the issue because he's based in KLS TV in Las Vegas, not too far from a rather interesting base. What's the name of it? Area 51, I think. And so he's not a witness, but he's talked to plenty of witnesses, even that are not even here with us anymore, including I think some of the ones that are still here. But he's a vast trove of information. He has certainly earned this privilege, and I'm very happy for George that he was able to do this and testify under oath. So the power of this is that there is just a huge range of things that George can testify to in terms of what he has heard. Now, this is all secondhand in pretty much every case. I'm not, and I'm not sure what firsthand testimony he might be privy to. He might be privy to some, but certainly he's mostly privy to information provided to him by very interesting people, important people over the decades, and the bigger picture, right? So his testimony, will be criticized to the extent that any of it is secondhand. It'll be criticized by the social media skeptics, but the wise people and the reasonable journalists are going to take it for what it is, an extraordinary um, compendium of information on this topic, which is no longer in doubt. In other words, when he sits down, he's be able to sit down in that committee under oath at a time when the idea the phenomena is real is simply not on the table. It is absolutely real, and anybody that doesn't think that is simply not paying attention or out of it or doesn't care. So it is real, and there is a very vast, a very significant and growing consensus that it's not only real, it is not human in origin, right? And so when he sits down, this array of testimony that he's going to give is uh, going to be received well and not nitpick too much. Now, as far as the other witnesses, I'm interested to see what they have to say. I'll assume that there's some firsthand stuff there. They were not picked randomly. I do know that there is a list of individuals that were higher up on the preference list, and they wanted them. And one of the reasons this hearing has been delayed is because um, they could not get a lot of the people they would like to have gotten um, to testify because things have gotten a little dicey, a little bit complicated. Some concerns about how how it's going to go for them. This is very volatile time, by the way, in general, right? The political volatility and intensity right now in Washington D.C. is off the charts, and so they're just kind of holding back. That's their right, and I have no problem with that. All right, that's all right because they're still there, and more witnesses are coming forward. And what the Department of Defense, or to put it, what I like to use the phrase, the managers of the truth embargo, wherever they operate from, and they're kind of scattered across a number of entities in our, I guess you could say, military intelligence complex. Uh, they have to understand this is an irreversible, inexorable process now. That more witnesses are going to come forward, and the more they come forward, the more they're going to come forward. And so, to the extent that they want to somehow push back against this, like they recently pushed back against the nuclear shutdown witnesses that are really wanting to testify, who would really be a big, major hearing, I assure you, they really pushed back in a very dramatic and stupid way. that it's a waste of time. Let it go. Let this come out, and hopefully let the UAP, wait for the UAP Disclosure Act to be passed. We'll talk about that, and then comply. Don't fight this until the last dog dies, because it's not a good look for the organizations, the military services, the intelligence services, and other DoD operations. That it's not a good look for them. It's undermining their integrity, the trust in them. It's time to end it. And so we'll see how they respond to this hearing, and whether they decide to try to make a problem here, try to push back or something. We'll see. But let me tell you, the fact that this is in the where they're locating it, in the Capitol Visitor Center. Wow. What next? RFK Stadium? I don't know. So that this is it, it's really a boost to me, because it's a clear indication of how serious they are. This group of patriots. I mean, these people are heroes, and I'm talking about the members of the oversight subcommittee, right? That we all know very well: Burchett, Luna, Mace, Garcia, Moskowitz, and so forth, who have absolutely refused to give up on this, have pushed it consistently, gone public. And while there's definitely progress in the Senate, and of course you can't dismiss Schumer, Rounds, Gillibrand's contribution, particularly Schumer, Rounds. This group, who are mostly of the conservative persuasion, though there are others in there that are not in that persuasion, but are operating in a very nonpartisan way. They're just not going partisan at all. This group is driving this process right now, and I think history will understand that, and they will receive the accolades and credit that they deserve. And of course, right now, the individual that's kind of in front of this right now is Burleson, but Luna had stepped back a little bit, but now she's back into it, including in a 2-hour interview on Rogan recently. So I'm very excited, and well, we're only 6 days away, so I'm going to be a busy boy between now and the 9th.
Right, a few things to pick up with you then, Steve. The first of which are the other witnesses. Like you say, you're not overly familiar. I don't think many folks will be. Jeff Nuccitelli, I think, may be the best known. He is to myself. I've interviewed Jeff back in December 2023. Other folks did around that time. He is a former Air Force security officer, and he discussed the huge red square sighting over Vandenberg. That was something that was pretty prominent at the time. However, the other two witnesses were Chief Alexandro Wiggins. So Alexandro was on Weaponized with Corbell and Knapp back in April 2025, folks. It was a Weaponized episode number 73. And I'll just read the description, the synopsis of that episode for you. Crew members aboard the USS Jackson witnessed an astonishing encounter with 4 unknown objects off the coast of Southern California in February 2023. And now one of those eyewitnesses is stepping forward. In this episode, Jeremy and George are joined by an active duty Navy service member who describes in vivid detail seeing a glowing tic-tac shaped object emerge from the ocean. The transmedium craft then linked up with 3 other tic-tacs, which subsequently zipped away in tight formation. The objects were detected on multiple sensors, and a video was recorded by crew members inside the Combat Information Centre of the ship. The witness, Alex Wiggins, an active duty Navy service member with 23 years of service, says sailors routinely encounter unidentified objects in the area where the first tic-tac incident was documented in 2004. And then the other witness, Dylan Borland, US Air Force veteran. I can't find exactly, but I'm pretty confident that this gentleman on LinkedIn is the Dylan Borland, who from September 2010 to February 2013 worked for the US Air Force as a geospatial intelligence analyst, responsible for collection, analysis, dissemination of geospatial intelligence. He then moved on to BAE Systems, that will raise some eyebrows, as an intel analyst, providing full motion video and imagery analysis in support of the global war on terror. And then he moved to Intrepid Solutions and Services LLC as a geospatial analyst and knowledge manager, ultimately. pretty interesting CV. I don't know much else about Mr. Borland. Don't know much else about Mr. Wiggins. Jeff Nuccitelli, we know his story, the story he has told, and of course we've covered Mr. Knapp. So what's your take on those three witnesses then, Steve?
Well, it appears, and it's hard to be sure based on what you've said, but it appears that the other three gentlemen may have firsthand testimony, meaning I saw that while I was working. I saw this. I witnessed that. In which case, they've surrounded George with three military gentlemen with military backgrounds. George does not have that kind of background, who have firsthand testimony, which helps to bolster George, who by and large I think is going to not be giving firsthand testimony in the sense that, well, he's firsthand to the person he was talking to, the individuals that he's engaged, right? And that's great, because I think people, it's just great. In other words, there's plenty of firsthand testimony out there, and we get all the complaints about, well, it's got to be firsthand or it doesn't count, which is nonsense. Uh, there's a lot of testimony that is not firsthand, which Grush was not firsthand, but it was fully supported, which is why anybody pushing back against him was, well, being ridiculous. But I think that is a good combination. So as George expands into, Lord knows what he's going to talk about. He could talk for hours. He could testify in so many things you can't imagine. I think that'll go over very, very well. So it's a powerful group, and I expect it's going to have significant impact.
Let me just add, and I'm pretty sure this is the case, I don't think Jeff is a first-hand witness himself. I'm pretty certain Jeff, given his role at the time, he was, and I'm just looking this up and trying to remember 2 years ago, the interview, he was collecting the evidence and testimony from the witnesses who saw the object. And that was his job at the time, to go round, so he's recounting the story. I would say personally, and from what I can see, initial reaction, the reaction online is always going to be mixed. I don't think that will go down well with a lot of the community that witnesses secondhand. I think George Knapp, if you like George, that's going to be a great one. I'm quite happy to see George there. Other folks won't be, because he is a journalist, from what I can see online. People are saying the other two seem to be first-hand witnesses.
Okay.
So I would lean, though, I think, to what you said before, Steve. There were witnesses on a list who aren't going to be here that I think they may have wanted to be there. And I wonder, is that part of Georgie's role? He's representing people who, for multiple different reasons, are not there on the day, cannot be there, don't want to be there, or can't be there yet.
I think he was just obviously a very strong witness that could talk about a lot of things. So we have two firsthand, possibly two, quote, secondhand. And by the way, this whole thing about secondhand witnesses, look, if someone is secondhand, then what do you do? The first thing you do is you look at their credentials, their vitae, their history, which usually is always easily documented. Not always, but at this level, once you get to Congress and so forth, it's well known. And so if they have very strong credentials in terms of what they've done and their accomplishments and rank and station and clearances and so forth, because George has got a 40-some year career as a journalist, and publishing forever, is totally known, then that obviously that's the next best thing, and it's important. But over the years of the truth embargo, one of the ways the truth embargo has survived almost 80 years, God bless it. Actually, it is 80 years now. Truth embargo, as of July of this year, because I like to start the truth embargo at when they reversed the Roswell uh, article. It said, no, it wasn't a saucer. It's 80 years on. One of the reasons is that no matter how much gravitas you have, no matter how sterling your career was, if you talked about this, it's nothing to it, and demeaned or ignored. And so, like on my website, I have a section, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under resources. I have a quote section, and it's got quite a few quotes from earlier on, just going way back, right, of pretty substantial people, including astronauts and so forth, clearly indicating that this is real and, in most cases, non-human, and it didn't work, right? So astronaut Mitchell repeatedly supported the fact that this was real and non-human, and it just didn't have that much leverage. In other words, people just dismissed it. Somehow the truth embargo was able to get us in that place where it was sufficiently demeaned and degraded, ridiculed, that even if somebody of significant accomplishments came forward on it, so what? And so secondhand can be incredibly powerful, particularly in this area. And I think what we're seeing is that more and more secondhand witnesses are going to be treated the way they should be. This will be an interesting test of that. And again, the amount of secondhand testimony that's out there is vast. In other words, we have built up a huge evidentiary matrix of information confirming the truth of this matter over 80 years. A lot of it was done by people, just regular citizens, not you know, not research entities, not the Federation of American Scientists, whatever the hell, Science Foundation. No, by just regular people writing these books, but talented people working hard and chronicling thousands and tens of thousands of cases. We built up this huge evidentiary base. And now it's being added to by a whole massive new tranche of evidence coming in from being brought forward, being found, witnesses coming forward. There is an avalanche coming down the mountain of evidence heading straight for the truth embargo managers and any of the entities that are particularly tasked with dealing with this issue and managing the truth embargo. It's literally heading right for them. And it's going to be first-hand testimony, second-hand, third-hand documents, photos, God knows what. And so the question is, are they going to step out of the way of this avalanche and accept it and be part of the truth process or not? And this is, of course, the matter at hand. I'm starting to feel a lot better about that. So another significant part of this is about to land on September the 9th.
I want to get your take on the actual title of the hearing itself and what that may kind of point to. So, the actual title of the hearing is Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection.
Excellent name. Perfect. They're basically saying exactly what needs to be said. We need testimony. This is a major issue, incredibly important issue, the most important issue in the world as far as I'm concerned. The witnesses need protection because it is so profound, and the government has pushed back on this for years. It covers all the bases. It's an historic title, and I like that.
You mentioned the truth embargo managers. You also mentioned quite rightly that not only the United States, but particularly the US at the moment, in the Western world, is in political upheaval. You can take your pick of any particular situation, politically, geopolitically, whatever you want to call it, economically, and things are a bit of a shit show. Do you not see a particular circumstance where, given the chaos that's ensuing, the people who are in charge of this truth embargo can use that to their advantage potentially?
Yes. Okay. Well, this is something that I've been hitting really hard in interviews for a very specific reason, because it's potentially a game changer. My office, which I've been in my office has been in the National Press Building now almost 6 years. And this building is 2 blocks from the White House, which is helpful. And so for those that have the time to watch a lot of news, which I do, but they in particular may understand that we are reaching a series of inflection points. This is an historic time. Interesting time. Definitely reflecting the Chinese curse. We are living in interesting times, and it isn't fun. And the outcomes are unknown, and there will be casualties, and so forth. I don't want to beat this up too bad much, but we are the diplomatic and international arrangements are breaking down fast, which is to say that the rewards for so many mistakes made by so many heads of state and mistakes in policy by nations are now coming due. Right? They're going to take their toll. The world is now extremely dangerous in ways that are not as apparent as they were in an earlier, simpler time. Obviously, the world was pretty damn dangerous in the early 20th century, got pretty dangerous in the middle of the 20th century. It's a danger not quite like that, because we now live in a world, we have weapons that are just off the charts. Not simply nuclear bombs that blow things up. We got about 12,000 of those, which I think includes the MIRVs, but maybe not. And if it doesn't include the MIRV warheads, God knows how much it is. Could be 20, 25,000. They're extremely powerful. We have faster missiles. We also have EMP weapons that are capable of taking out entire countries' grid, which means you don't have to blow it up. You just take the grid out and just everybody pretty much starves to death and or dies off. And then you can move in if you want. You got potential for satellite weapons. The sophistication of bioweapons is light years beyond where it was in World War I, where mustard gas was considered a particularly nasty thing. Trust me, it's child's play now. That could jump in at any time. Just lurks there in the background. It's considered a weapon of mass destruction, so it's kind of under the mutually assured destruction umbrella. If you hit a nation with a massive bio attack, they can nuke you. That's there. All right. We have 8.3 billion people on the planet now. It was about 3 billion when World War II was wrapping up. That's 5 more billion people, a significant portion of which are not very happy. And we continue to spend untold trillions of dollars on servicing the fear and terror we have from the other. Everybody's protecting themselves from everybody else. And so those trillions of dollars are not available to feed anybody, clothe anybody, medical care, housing, water, food, whatever. It's not there. So guess what? People go without and they get angry. They get really angry. And then, of course, all the conflict that's happening, so many civilian deaths and so forth, they get beyond angry and they do bad things. And so there's a sense of danger now that is it's a little less obvious, and yet it's there. You can feel it. So there's that. Okay. At the same time, we have actual wars going on, actually happening right now. We're watching. And unlike earlier times when you waited for the newsreel to turn up in front of a movie, you were going to watch at the theater back home. These are live streamed now. You get to see them happening as they go down. And at least these days, they continue to, how would you say, not show the awful stuff, the really bad stuff that you would look at and go, oh my God, and retch perhaps. No, they don't show that because they don't want to offend the audiences back home. So they show you a lot, but they pixel out this and pixel out that. I am perfectly someone that supports the idea that the journalism out there shows these wars in every single detail, as awful as it can be, and stop protecting the civilian populations elsewhere so as not to offend their sensibilities, because that just makes it a lot easier to put up with the next slaughter that's going to take place. So that's going on. At the same time, of course, we are reaching what could very well be the end of the truth embargo 80 years on, which is a much more promising process that could change everything for the better. Right? It is not, it is the opposite of what I just described. It is something that could bring hope to a lot of people. It could change the world. It's just hard to describe the impact that this is going to have if we can simply end the embargo and acknowledge worldwide that we're not alone, and then start getting into what we know and the tech we have and how to take that tech and use it to build instead of destroy, whatever. This is coming to a head at the same time that this other circumstance. In other words, the simplest way to put it is we're closer to a nuclear event that could trigger a war than ever, and we're also closer to disclosure, ending the truth embargo, than ever. That's happening at the same time. Then we're also in the United States heading an inflection point. This is a much smaller thing in a way, but the nature of it makes its power far more significant. An inflection point of what may go down as one of the biggest scandal, certainly in American history. We've been through many, we've seen them, right? I've lived through quite a few, watched them on TV. Yeah, and people were uncomfortable and they didn't like it, and it was awful. It was nothing. This is something. It's hard to describe how big it is, but more and more people are alluding to it. Anna Polina Luna, when she left the extraordinary, apparently, meeting, not a briefing, but a meeting, in which 10 victims of Epstein's time on this earth spoke with members of Congress. When it was over, she was clearly a little shaken, and she went out of her way to tell the media that were there that this is way bigger than you may think, and it is. As for Nancy Mace, who is a victim of sexual abuse about a couple of years ago, she couldn't stay the whole time. She left, walked out of that, walked down the hall crying, said nothing to anybody, and this went on. Then she posted something on her site. This is just a glimpse of how huge this is. Why is it huge? Because it went on for so many years. Because it's not just somebody abusing women, it is somebody involved in very large scheme endeavors that have involved hugely important, well-known figures, powerfully politically, wealthy into perhaps the billions, and other aspects of it. It is gargantuan. And it has been held at bay for 20 some years, at least. Yeah, at least, maybe more. Somehow it was able to go on, possibly because there were so many powerful, wealthy people involved that it was like a blackmail circle where everybody knew they couldn't do this because so everybody is like, it's like mutual assured destruction, right? It's the scandal version. Nobody can do anything because everybody goes up at the same time. Anyway, 20 years of it. And the number of names involved is in possibly hundreds and hundreds. In other words, the number of names of people of substance that people know who have very substantial careers and whatever else could be in the hundreds. And the effort to stop it is starting to unravel because they got the files. And by my files, I mean they got disks with huge numbers of documents and videos, and they haven't yet been destroyed somehow. The FBI got it initially, and that's just been just kind of out there for a while, just sort of, how would you say, simmering, right? And the effort to try to prevent it has been going on, you know that, and yet ultimately I don't see how. It's just too late. It's going to go. It's like a volcano that has clearly achieved a point where you're looking at and you're going, this is going to erupt. And anybody that knows anything about volcanoes, there is not a damn thing you can do about it, right? And so we're at that inflection point. And it is not, and this is going to be ugly, nasty, vile, angering. People are going to get angry in many ways. There's going to be so many things to be angry about. It's going to dominate the news at a time when the news is not easily dominated. So there's that. There's other inflection points, right? Involving environmental crises and whatever the hell. So here is what I have been talking about of late. And I say this respectfully, and I present this in a nonpartisan way. I am not pushing a partisan narrative. I'm really not. Uh, I have kept that out of my work for 30 years. I'm not going to start now. This issue transcends politics. It transcends religion. It transcends economics. It transcends, the the uh, the, uh, the desires of nations, so forth. Transcends it all. It's the biggest issue in all of human history. Bigger than whatever the hell happened 2,000 years ago. It was interesting. You can watch it on Ancient Aliens. This is way bigger than that. And so it is nonpartisan. So things have happened which have finally convinced me that the matter of disclosure by the current president of the United States is in play. It has been discussed. It is being looked at. They have been testing the waters as to how it might be received, and I believe that is a fact. Okay, I don't have inside connections, right? Nobody threw anything out the window yesterday from the White House for me, and I went and grabbed it. Right? No, I don't have any of that. This is
Saw
simply
that. Yep, I saw
assessing
that.
the what is known in the public space. And here is what is known. All the way back in the beginning of Trump's first term, there was the odd UAP or UFO thing happening. Something from his son, something said something about he might have been briefed, a comment from the president, a minor question from the journalist. It was not, you know, hidden off on the side. It was there. It wasn't taken up. It didn't seem to go much in terms of the White House. But then there was a lot happening back then with respect to politics in the White House. So, but, and this is important, while the White House was not making any dramatic moves during the first Trump administration, right, which starts on January the 20th of 2017, because of what happened in December of 2017, when the New York Times article slammed down after the 10 people came forward publicly from within the military intelligence complex as retired and said, we're going to pursue this issue in multiple ways. Plenty of progress was made during that period. Okay. And then we move into the Biden administration. For a number of reasons, the Biden administration, the Biden White House was not going to engage this issue. There was kind of a political existential quality to what was going on there. It was difficult, and the battle lines were drawn. And of course, we had certainly last 2 years we had a president who had lost, I think. Well, in other words, we had a very divided Congress as well. So it did not emanate much from the Biden White House. However, in the years that he was there, we made extraordinary strides. Okay, extraordinary strides, including witnesses coming forward and huge amounts of coverage, thousands of articles in the mainstream media, favorable in almost every case. You had the Grush coming out, the major event of the Grush hearing 2023, and much more. Huge progress. Okay. And then President Trump begins his second term. So when he starts his second term, almost 8 years of progress on this issue, taking it to levels we've never seen before. The issue meaning the reality and the truth of an extraterrestrial presence or technologically advanced human presence. Huge amounts have been accomplished, including legislation. I could go on, but most people know this. As he starts his second term, fine. And this second term clearly was going to be even more controversial, more challenging than the first. Okay. So with that in mind, with that preface, I'd write this up in an article, but I write up the articles, I send them out to venues and they never publish them. I guess as an activist, I'm a little skittish and maybe they worry. But the point is that 5 days before he starts his second term, remember what all I said, everything that happened in the previous 8, his son, who has a podcast at that point, triggered, Donald Trump Jr., brings on Luis Elizondo and Ross Coulthard, two of the major players in this unfolding process. One a witness and a kind of an activist, and the other a journalist who broke the initial story of Grush, and of course, God knows what else. I mean, he's a major player, and he's doing tons and tons of journalism. They brought him on, and they talked UAP or UFO or whatever the hell for 2 hours. There is zero possibility that that was an accident. That it had been booked a year before, and it just turned out that Donald Trump won the election, so it ended up being his father that would be inaugurated 5 days later. No. So I will say with high confidence that that was a deliberate choice of those two people, insisted by his father. You do that, or and probably some of the people in the White House around his father. And so, okay, why would they do that? Why would you bring those two witnesses on 5 days before you're inaugurated? I can only think of one reason that makes even the remotest sense. And that is, you're going to see how the public reacts to that podcast. And it's very easy to do. You see the viewing, how many views, you can read comments to the podcast and so forth. You can scan social media. You can get a pretty good read on how that podcast was received. Okay, so file that away. And thus begins the Trump presidency. And obviously, it's been quite a ride. It's been intense. Okay. There's more happened in the next 3 months in this presidency than probably just about any 4 years of any other presidency we know in our memory. It's been almost impossible to keep up with it. One thing after another after another. The controversy is growing, intense. Adeline's being drawn, hundreds of court cases, whatever. So that goes on 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and again, the issue of our issue, the issue that I'm involved in, the truth embargo continues to advance. And I want to go into litany here, but trust me, most people know this. If you're on social media, you've seen what's happening. Recently, some very important things have happened, right? That hasn't stopped. It's been relentless. Okay, fine. So whatever is happening with respect to politics and the governance of the country, that some people think is fantastic and other people think it's the end of the United States as we know it, the matter of this non-human technologically advanced non-human, and the matter of the truth embargo has continued to advance and make progress. Okay, fine. So, has anything happened that seems to indicate that these two things have crossed streams? Which we know from the movie is a bad thing, except in the end, it had a great ending.
Yeah.
Is there anything? And I'm watching for it. And believe me, that's nothing. All I do is watch. I don't have a life. I scan. I don't know. I've got 6 newspapers I'm signed up to. I'm on Twitter. I see thousands and thousands of posts on X, which is pretty much the main conduit. And I'm 2 blocks from the White House. I'm paying attention, well, so others people can lead a life, take a vacation, right? Raise their kids. And so I'm watching, and then it happens. What happens? Well, as Bowman said in 2010, Contact, something wonderful. At least I think so. In rapid succession, this is what takes place. No warning. No warning at all. Keeping in mind there's 8 million, 20 million, I don't know how many podcasts there are out there. So if you want to go on a podcast, you have an unlimited choice. You can pick high, low, middle, whatever, this kind of whatever. You just and if you're a person of high, you know, status and so forth, yeah, you can pretty much pick anybody you want. Like if the Pope wanted to do a podcast, he could pick any one of 15 million, and they would say, "Yes, sir, you're welcome." And so the Vice President of the United States, Vice President Vance, turns up on a podcast. The name, I forget the name. I could throw it out. It's less important. It's easy to find. It was a podcast I'd never heard of. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean they're wonderful. I think it was two gentlemen, but whatever. I think it was two women. Whatever. Doesn't matter. He's on a podcast. And let's face it, if you're the vice president, it doesn't matter what podcast you're going to be on, it's going to go viral. It's going to get out there. It's going to be seen and retweeted and so forth. And he goes on to talk about this, that, and whatever else. But he lets the UAP, UFO issue come up. Now, right away, some people will go, okay, so what? He wants to talk about it. No, you have to understand how these things work. If you're the vice president or the president, right, or anybody really big time, and you don't want something to come up, it does not come up. If you want it to come up, it comes up. All right. That's just the way it is. All right. So yeah, so in other words, would you sit down at 60 Minutes or one of those quote high-end journalistic things, knowing that well you can't get a deal with them for that, so they're going to ask whatever they want? You don't do that. If you want something to come up, you go on a venue that you have control. When Hillary Clinton, when Jimmy Kimmel, I assure you, she decided if she was going to talk about UFOs, and it came up because she wanted it to. So he's talking about UFOs, UAPs, this, that, whatever. I don't remember the details, but what I do remember and what's most important, and this is the shoe drop, the Vice President of the United States said, "I'm obsessed with UFOs." Now, a lot of people will go, "Isn't that quaint?" It's cool. It's like a hobby. You got some books in the library. I'm in your basement library, kind of a thing. I didn't know. It's so cute, right? It's like saying I'm a butterfly collector. I've been collecting my whole life. Got a huge collection. No, I'm obsessed with UFOs. Is boom, and I'm going, okay. There is no way he goes on and says that unless after how long has it been? It was January. It's approximately 10 months. January 20, 10 months, they decided to retest the water and see how the reaction would be now. Okay. And then only 4 days later, right? Another rather important person, the director of national intelligence, DNI. I mean, really, I don't care what you think about people on the Hill right now. An incredibly important, powerful person goes on another podcast, not particularly well known as far as I know. Nice people, they're chatting it up. The UAP subject comes up, and she speaks to it this way and that way. Nothing too profound, but clearly she's not dismissing it. She's basically saying, "I can talk UAP on a podcast with the cameras rolling," and I'm going, "That's two." And what next? And what next is the second shoe that dropped. If anybody's got a better explanation, email me. Tell me I'm crazy. Account for this. Explain it. Only 5 or 6 days later, the chairman of the Federal Secrets Task Force that is in charge by its own mandate with the JFK files, RFK, MLK files, and the Epstein files, and the UAP issue, which they've addressed. She was also on the subcommittee that held the hearings. So she's been dealing with this issue for a couple of years. It is part of her portfolio and her historical legacy. She goes on not just any podcast, she goes on what it would rightfully be said is the most important podcast on the planet Earth. The podcast that had a major role in electing her president, Joe Rogan. It's hard to estimate how many people are going to watch a Joe Rogan podcast, not only live, but eventually in archive. But yeah, it can get up in, I think, 20 million, 30 million. I mean, there's almost no upside depending upon who's on. And so when she goes on that podcast for 2 hours, she knows full well that millions upon maybe tens of millions of people are going to watch this. And Could she have prevented Joe Rogan from asking her about the UFO issue? Maybe. It's possible that she could have wanted to do that podcast and said, Joe, I don't want to talk about this. And Joe Rogan might have said, okay. And he might not have. And if he said, no, I'll talk about what I want, she would have said, well, I'm just not going to be able to do it. But thank you so much for thinking of me. But obviously, the subject comes up and she starts talking UFOs and UAPs. Now, understand, for several years, she's been in skiffs. She's been reviewing witnesses. She's been doing vetting in order to hold all these the briefings and so forth. She's been in the heart of that whole thing, going up on the hill. And so she's talked to a lot of people. She's seen a lot of documents. She has a level of understanding and awareness that is above ours, above journalists, because of where she's her position and her status and her clearance capability. It's not top, but I assure you, she's talked to a lot of people that I can't talk to. And before you know it, she's talking about the fact that what she has been told and what she has been seen in documents confirms that we have that technology. And that technology didn't fly itself. We have the bodies. And then she goes really deep. I've listened to it. There's a transcript out there. I encourage people to go listen to it, read the transcript, become familiar with every single word this woman says in that podcast, because I think she was changing history right at that moment. As she says that they seem to think, or it seems to be that they are interdimensional. Okay, fine. Whether they're interdimensional, time travelers, or from another planet, that's equally profound. All three are. That's it, right? And I hope they're not interdimensional. I think they're star to star. Doesn't matter. But the fact that she would even say that, you think that she was trying to diminish in other words, I've told you some important things I want you to know, but now I'm going to say something crazy so you'll be dissuaded from caring. No, she's actually had these kind of discussions. And there are people in our military intelligence community, witnesses or whatever, that have alluded they're leaning that way. Barring a full accounting of everything we know, you can lean a number of different ways. Until we end the truth embargo, we have a lot of people leaning here, there, and everywhere else, except everybody should be leaning in the right direction, which is the truth. And so I concluded at that point that absolutely the White House is now very much in taking the temperature of the American people on this issue. What is the reaction? They just had 3 bing in a row. And by the way, scores of articles were written about each one. Okay. And they're up on my website right now. And if you go and read those articles, right, 2025, it's in the uh, media. It's in the media list, right? Link list. Um, if you read them, it's fine. It's positive. None of these articles are going after them about, oh, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? What the hell are you talking about? They're all basically covering it state legit. And so this is the punchline here. I think they are seriously considering ending this truth embargo. And by that, I mean the president ending this embargo. You don't take the temperature of this in that way in order to, I don't know, have the undersecretary of state come out and do it. You do it because of the president. And I'm going to take a wild guess. It's not wild at all. And say primary reason that they are doing it, but not the only reason, is that because of this other matter I discussed. Remember, I said they cross streams, and that is you've got a massive scandal coming that is going to be a bad news for a lot of people. It's going to be awful. Uh, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be casualties, and whoever those casualties are, right? Ending the truth embargo is about the most significant, profound diversion and distraction you could possibly do. Nothing short of actually launching a nuclear war. That would do it, and everything becomes moot. But there's nothing more powerful than that. And so for a certain amount of time, a long time, the entire media complex shifts to that. The public's interest shifts to that. International issues shift to that, and it would literally dominate human the human experience for a while. In which case, that other stuff is backburnered. All right, that's one thing. But there is a second aspect of this, which is also extremely important, that people or others are going to be reluctant to talk about. I get it, but I don't have, there's no guardrails on what I say. It's what I want to say, and that's it. I'm an activist. And that is this. If the president of the United States does the very simple thing, it will take 5 minutes, walks out in the Oval Office, or simply steps out in the Oval Office or the East Room and sits in the Oval Office East Room and in front of maybe a select group of reporters just brought in for that one issue, whatever, doesn't matter. Or even if he goes on Rogan, because this is new time, we're in a new era, and like you can do something on Rogan that you could never even thought of doing, say 20, 30 years ago, but on a show like that, you could do it now. And simply confirms that what we've been hearing is exactly what is the case, and that he certainly has the ability to confirm that personally. We're not alone. We have these craft. We have the bodies of the people in those craft, and they are not human. Something along those lines that basically confirms that we're not alone. However it's phrased, that is disclosure with a capital D. That is the end of the truth embargo. And why is this important? Because the head of state that does this first, not second, new, first, whoever it is, and there's a number of heads of state out there, will immediately achieve one of the greatest political legacies of all time, transcending almost anything you want to point to. Okay? It will go around the world in a day. This individual will be heralded as one of the great truth tellers, ending one of the greatest lies of all time and triggering a complete transformation of our human civilization in relatively short order. I mean, it won't be the next day, but I assure you it'll be faster than any other transformation we've been under. Almost certainly get a Nobel Prize. It's a lock. Okay. And so whatever that head of state faces, that head of state will always have that and that legacy until the end of time. And so I'm simply suggesting that that makes that particular move very logical, very appropriate in a way, very helpful, and even self-serving. That is where I'm at right now. That is what I'm putting out there. And so far, nobody has come back at me, right, on this. Again, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm not trying to pick sides at all. I'm simply addressing the circumstances that are before us, right? And you look at the circumstances, you try to come up with a logical assessment as best you can, because you can't, I'm not Baba Vanga, I can't predict the future. And put that out there if the consequences are significant, if the outcome is profound, because I'm gonna, I'm biased in a sense. I want the president to do that. Absolutely. I want him to do it tomorrow. And if all I say talked about happens, that is fine. So those that want much more negative outcomes or whatever that serve their angers and predilections, I get it. I understand that. I don't have that problem. The president could do it tomorrow. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are other heads of state that could do this. And you may have noticed of late, they're kind of getting together out there, kind of a coalition of heads of state that are aligning up opposing us. One of them could do it tomorrow. And once that happens, all of the positive aspects of being the disclosure head of state for the second person are gone.
Okay, Steve.
How's that? Like that? This wasn't
Yeah,
much Q&A, but I think you knew that. It was going to be
that's all right.
today.
I'm going to hit record now. No. So listen, I am going to come back at you. I'm going
Fire.
to
Let's
preface
do
it
it.
though. I'm going to preface it though and say I, of course, like you and like anyone listening to this, would love any head of state tomorrow to give us the capital D disclosure that you have wonderfully outlined there. I'm going to talk like the TikTok generation, and I hate TikTok, right? No offense to anyone on it, but you know those clips just
Oh, no,
do my
no,
head in.
no, no. Oh, no, Andy, you just said you
I
hate the
I need
TikTok
to.
generation. My God, man, have you any idea what you're in works for? Oh, my Lord, take it back, please, take it back.
Steve, listen, you are the least TikTok friendly guest on the planet. So what you're kind of saying is, and I'm going to build myself up here for my argument, is we have this thing that if the truth comes out, and I don't mean the 30,000 pages of files or whatever they've got, I mean the actual truth that probably still isn't out there. There's going to be a lot of movies and CDs that people can't go back and watch because their favourite actors, singers, whoever, are going to be named as implicit in something that's disgustingly shocking, worldwide scandal, okay? So you've got the Epstein stuff. Run alongside it, you've got the UFO stuff. And you're saying obviously the UFO stuff may be used to make folks forget about this really bad thing, this Epstein stuff, and the truth of it,
No,
and that
no,
would
no, no. It's the opposite. It's the
you think
opposite.
they're going to use the Epstein
The
stuff?
Epstein I'm sorry. No, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, you say UFO stuff.
Yeah, they're going to use
The
yeah,
disclosure event
right.
mitigates and will certainly slow down the other thing, which is still going to happen.
Yeah. My issue with that is there's an element of faith being put in society which may be a little misplaced, because if you look online, there's a lot of morons. There's a lot of idiots who have voices. And do you watch Squid Game?
No, I have assiduously avoided that because I mean, again,
Okay,
I just don't
right.
need that in my head.
No, just there's moments in Squid Game, and I think it's been out long enough, folks, where at the end of the task, everyone knows at the end of each task in Squid Game, you play a kids game, and people genuinely die. That's how you're eliminated from the competition. However, at the end of each task, what they do with the remaining contestants is they give you the choice to leave. No consequence. We can end the game now. We just need the majority to vote to leave. If there's 50 of you left, we need 26 to 24. And people go, and the obvious thing, once they've seen this shocking, horrific thing, is you would expect them all to go up and say, oh my God, we should all leave. But people begin to question it. People begin to make bad choices. People think, well, I survived this one, so just one more. And it keeps going on and on and on. And people never really vote to stop it. I'll just kind of end it there. But that's the gist. I think there's a bit of an issue with society where we may actually be at a really odd point where there are large swaths of society who would care far less about what we would in terms of disclosure than seeing which pop stars or movie stars are named on the Epstein list. And there's almost getting a worryingly large element, especially on the younger demographics, where they would shrug their shoulders at, we have bodies, we have craft, we know these beings are interdimensional, star to star, whatever it may be, and we're going to bring them out next week. Or do you want to see this redacted list? I worry that as people walk up and Squid Game it and choose which one they want, UFOs or Epstein, it goes the other way. And that's just the bad place I see society being in. Not that there's a whole load of impacts off of that, but that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Okay. I've heard this thinking, of course, many times.
Thanks.
A lot of what happens in the world is not democratic. In other words, you do something bad, right? And so somebody spends a lot of money, goes out and polls, I don't know, the entire population of the country. Let's just type to a country, right? And they discover that 57% of the people don't care, 43 do. And therefore, you're gold, right? That's not the way the world works. There are private opinions and views, and there's institutional opinions and views, institutional consequences. Right? That's how. Let me give you an example. I think this is a good example. You have this young fellow, Maggione, tragic thing, who did a pretty awful thing on video, seen, right? So he was caught, and he's come forward, and for whatever reason,
Is this the assassination of the
of the
high level
medical
exec? Yeah.
CEO.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for various reasons, there are a whole lot of people that are very sympathetic to him, and they're literally posting this all the time. They're showing up at the court appearances and what have you. And so there's a certain number of people that think, hey, you know, what he did was not as bad as you might think, and maybe I was justified, and let's let him go. So what if 51% of the American people felt that way? So hey, 51% kind of feel, let's let him go. No, 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 no. There's 8 billion people in this world, 340 million people in the United States. And so anything that happens, I guarantee you can get together and cobble together a group of people that are going, no big deal. I don't care. Hey, I think I like it. But that's not what we're dealing with here. When this scandal, because of the kinds of people it's going to affect and their legacies in history, there are institutional consequences. There are financial consequences. A whole lot of other people are indirect going to be affected. And so this is going to be upset many apple carts and create huge problems for substantial institutions in power that are not going to just sit by and go, you know, everybody makes a mistake. It's going to be hell. All right. And people are going to be, turning on each other. You're going to have court cases. It's going to go on and on and on. And the media is going to engage it. And so when I talk about diversion, pretty much it's institutional diversion, meaning this: if the media has shifted its focus on the post-disclosure situation that suddenly hits, it doesn't matter how many people in the country could give a damn. The pressure on those involved in the Epstein scandal is mitigated for a while. It is not ended. It's simply not so much in the front, and will slow down. It will slow down the outcome. It won't eliminate, and that's what I'm referring to. Okay, and so again, and the issue of legacy. Okay, the issue of legacy transcends again democratic matters. If you get a legacy, if you do something extra, gives you a legacy, whether people like that or not, whether they like you or not, a legacy is what it is. It passes down in history. It is what it is. It's not changeable. And so, if you win a Medal of Honor in war, you achieve a high esteem. That is a part of your legacy. And even if you go on to have a problem after the war, maybe become a criminal, maybe go to jail, you always have that Medal of Honor. It is not democratic. They can't vote it away from you. And so I'm simply saying that the fundamental tenet is that there are two huge benefits that come, assuming this scandal blows as big as I think it is, and so forth: distraction, delay, mitigation. And I'm just, to what degree, I don't know. But I do know one thing: that the leader that ends this truth embargo gets a legacy of extraordinary significance, and nobody can take that away. It doesn't matter whether they like him or don't like him, right? Doesn't matter. They cannot take that away. And the other aspect of it is this: ending the truth embargo is not an American thing. It is a global thing. It is a civilization thing. The truth embargo ends for all 8 billion people that moment. Almost 200 countries and sovereign states, sovereign territories, and 8 billion people. And you have just freed the lie up for them. You have just freed the truth up for all 8 billion. And I assure you, as you move away from the United States. The number of people in this world that really give a damn about these other matters, right, shrinks to nothing. Okay, but the legacy will be global. So this is a hugely asymmetric situation. And then some people say, you're trying to make it good, or you're trying to what you're picking side. I'm not. I'm simply saying this is history. History is what it is. It's huge. It tends to go where it wants to go. And I'm just trying to say, I think this is where it's going, and the outcome will be what it is. There were a lot of people, for instance, leading up to World War II, that kind of saw it coming. And they were
Yeah.
pointing out things like, that's not good, and that's not good. And oh boy, I'm not liking that. This could lead to World War II. And people say, what, are you a war lover? Right? Yeah, and can you predict the future? No. But they saw what they saw. And a lot of people said, I'm out of here. And they left Europe. Again, bad, and it's kind of a negative thing. This is a little more positive.
No, no. Let me come in there,
So
Steve,
there
then,
you go.
because
That's my
that's not
that's
a
my
bad place.
response.
Yeah, yeah. So history at what cost is probably a good place to go then, because again, if you want to go with, we've got the president of the, and I'm just going to use Trump. We've got the president of the United States, Donald Trump, has confirmed in whatever way he says a non-human presence. We've got that capital D disclosure. If it's at the expense or being done for nefarious reasons, or as a distraction,
Yeah.
or it's been done even not just for Epstein but for other reasons, is there not a huge risk around that? That yes, we have this truth out, but that would be questioned, and would it be the whole truth? Then there's a lot of questions come off the back of that. And I suppose I have to ask, are you at the point where you would go, that's enough, you'd be satisfied, and where it goes from there, to hell with it, whatever happens, happens? But then there's a danger that you've got, that could be gatekeepers and truth embargo managers still controlling a narrative and going, okay, we're going to let this out, but do you know what? Everything that comes out from here is utter bullshit. And you perhaps start a new truth embargo with 80 years of BS using that narrative of, here's disclosure, but it's what we want you to think disclosure is.
Okay. 2 points you've raised. I'll respond to both of them. First, let me say that ending the truth embargo is so massively significant that the fact that it also may have served the person that ended it in a way that was self-serving to that individual. It's not even in the it's nothing. It's like, fine, person got some benefit. Who cares? The world just got a benefit 10 million times more important than that. And so that's an asymmetry that's not going to be a problem. And
Sure.
then
Okay.
you've asked what the fundamental question, which is independent of this scenario that I've presented, is, well, then what? Right? Now, I think what you're implying is that if the head of state that ends the truth embargo, it has certain problems, problematic in certain ways. Well, couldn't that then pretend that it's going to go badly and what have you? I get it. If, say, Vladimir Putin were to end the truth embargo, there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well, right? What next? I know it's going to go well. Fine. You're right. And you could pick other leaders, except it's not happening in a vacuum. We got 80 years leading up to this, right? 80 years of history and docs and all the stuff that's happened. And so the way it will go is that if our president discloses, I'm going to confidently predict that several other heads of state will practically be right behind it. They're not going to sit back and go, wow, I had no idea, right? Particularly the Prime Minister of the UK, right? UK Prime Minister. I mean, I had no
Talking about
idea.
that right
There's
enough.
so much stuff implicating the UK, and this thing's not even funny. And we could go down the line. The point is, they are not going to sit back as this thing starts to move around the world and say, I know nothing. They have evidence, they have gun camera footage up the yin yang. They can come forward and confirm it immediately, within days, within weeks, whatever, but pretty damn fast. And so very quickly, it's not Donald Trump told the truth. do you believe it or not? And if you don't, then this is no big deal. No, he's going to get backed up by an array of heads of state. How many, it doesn't matter, but 2, 5, 6, 8, 10, certainly the nuke nations. And
Why?
so the matter of Donald Trump's our president's veracity becomes moot. Now, the other point is this: once it happens, it's not happening in a vacuum. We've already got pieces of legislation. We have a UAP Act. It could be passed, signed later this year. It's a major act that encompasses the whole process of bringing everything out. We've got how many witnesses do you think are going to be willing to come forward after the truth embargo ends, right? And the risk falls to practically zero. How much massive evidence is going to be available? It's not available now. And so it becomes it creates a new tide of history moving forward that is more powerful than anybody in a boat floating on that tide, trying to undermine it or bitching about it or complaining. All the little, social media skeptics are doing their thing. No, it is a tide. It will go where it's going to go, and there's not a damn thing that can be done about it. So I'm just not worried about that, Andy. It's going to be fine. Okay. I don't know. Is there any leader out there that somehow would be a really superior person to end the truth embargo? Is you go to the smaller countries that don't have to deal with these massive macro processes, maybe the Prime Minister of New Zealand, or I don't know, whoever's running San Marino right now, maybe, but no. Every major nation in this world, meaning the big ones, the nuke powers, as well as some other non-nuke, very powerful nations, have all committed crimes against humanity. Every single one of them. Okay. Every one. Some more recent than others, but in their history, oh yeah, right? They've done awful things. And so there is no per, you know, perfectly, what's the word I'm looking for? There is no pure nation or head of state of that. Well, there's no pure nation whose head of state can come forward
Yeah.
from that and go, okay, and everybody go, oh, well, this is great. No, no, no. In fact, ending the truth embargo is about getting to a place, hopefully not too far down the line, when all of the heads of state of this world are basically serving their people and trying to serve the planet and moving away from all those crimes against humanity, so that as each year passes, the distance between the last crime against humanity increases. It is, and it's one of the things that I talk about. I'll say it now. The disclosure is the only pathway forward that's going to save our ass. Right? We've made too many mistakes, done too many things wrong, screwed too many things up, not fixed a plethora of stuff that had to be fixed. We've built unbelievable amounts of weapons, squandered hundreds of trillions of dollars. And so now in this point in time, you got people that are going, it's over. We need to go to Mars, because the only way we're going to save the human race is if we go to Mars, because there won't be a living human on this planet not too long from now. You've got mutual assured destruction is like global anxiety. The entire planet should be on a Xanax strip. It's not good. Now, some people just don't want to think about it. I don't blame them. Raise your kids, hope for the best, go to their soccer games, try to make a living. But there are people like me and many others smarter than me, I assure you, including think tanks, that they know what's going on. They know how bad it is. And it's not fun to keep telling people that, because it kind of gets to them. And I get it. But I'm able to talk about this in the context of something profound. There are people out there that will be happy to tell you how awful it is, but they don't have a way out. It's just, this is it, right? It's Walking Dead, baby. The zombie apocalypse is coming. Not a damn thing we can do about it. But that's not the case with this issue. With this issue, we have a way out, I believe. I'd love to debate anybody at any college anywhere about that, and we could discuss it. It would be fun. It'd be very civil. There are too many people that present this way. And this is why I'm still around 30 years on, because I don't have the credentials, I don't have the resources, I don't have the gravitas, I don't have huge connections, but I'm still here, still giving these interviews. I've given more interviews than anybody else in the subject, which is no big deal. because I've been at it so long, and that's all I do pretty much. But because this needs to be told and it needs to be presented in this kind of political way, people want to talk to me, and I'll keep talking to them, and I'll keep saying this until somehow I realize, no, it's not going to work. Won't matter. Disclosure will not make any difference. Human civilization is about to head back to the Stone Age for a while. Hopefully, it won't be too long. But hey, who wants to think that way? So we do have a way out. And by the way, let's also include this. If you have a reasonable knowledge of the history of the UAP presence, or the ET, or technologically advanced non-human, without getting into ancient times, just in the last 80 years, if you have a reasonably robust understanding of it, mine is, it's not at the level of some of the researchers. I mean, it's a massive subject. The researchers have gotten down into the very basic stuff. They can rattle off stuff. I have a big picture view, but it's reasonable. If you have a reasonable knowledge of the history of this issue going back to 1947, there is ample evidence that the ETs all have an agenda here. They're just not hanging around doing whatever the hell they feel like. They have an agenda, and that agenda seems to be in our favor. It seems to be that they actually care how screwed up we are. Have maybe some reasons why they would like to see us get it together for their benefit. And they have done things and said things, and there are certain actions that they've done that support that. There's very little that is against that interpretation. Very, very little. And so that's part of it too. Now, if you are a citizen that doesn't know anything about the ET issue and you're hearing about this stuff, it's a little confounding. I mean, you may go, yeah, I think it's probably true, but I don't know anything about it. And so the ET's going to eat us. They're going to blow us up. Is there a deal? Is, there are treaties or whatever the hell else? I get it. Well, the reason they don't know about it is the government said there's nothing to know about for 80 years. They've kept us ignorant to make it that much more difficult to assess the situation. That's why you have activists. The activist job in activist movements is to get a government or an authority to do something it should do because it's the right thing to do. Even if the government has been very successful in keeping everybody in the dark or out of it, so they don't even have the ability to engage it, but it's still the right thing to do. And so you press it on behalf of everyone else that doesn't understand it, hasn't been kept from them. And you do what every single activist has to do in all of history, every single one. Nobody gets to take a pass on this. Each activist has to decide what I am doing to try to, and everybody that's involved in it, just not me, but everybody. What my contribution to this activist process that's going to force an authority, a government, to do this is the right thing to do. You can't be certain. There are no guarantees. The world's too complex. You just have to decide, is it the right thing to do? And then you do it. And if it goes bad, that's unfortunate. But I would say a world where people are doing what they think is the right thing to do, even though it doesn't always work, is a world with a much better chance of going somewhere and achieving a civilization worthy of calling that name, calling itself a civilization, which is to say the truth doesn't always give you what you want, but it is more likely to give you what you need and what is right than lies. Lies don't take you anywhere but down, though there are short-term moments where you can fly for a little bit, but then you crash and burn. And so seeking the truth over lies has the better likelihood of an outcome. Doing what you think is the right thing to do has a better likely outcome. But there are those that want absolutes, right? Unless you can perfectly prove that this is going to work out great, which is impossible to do, then why should we care? Why should we support it? What can I say? That is the activist path. If someone doesn't want to do those things and view it that way, they don't want to take this path because it will not work well for them. They will be very unhappy.
You mentioned about how many interviews, Steve, you've done. There's a good reason folks like speaking to you, and I certainly have enjoyed it whenever I've spoken to you. I think there's a reason people listen to or watch this, and it's the way I approach the subject in a certain way. I like to think I've learned not just from doing this, but in professional life and everything, getting older. I can look at a lot of things from different points of view, and I can look at an argument from multiple sides, even disagreeing with myself. Why do people think a certain way? Okay, does that help change my viewpoint? To your point, the you mentioned disclosure would be a way, and I'm paraphrasing, but to almost cover up the greatest crimes against humanity or the great crime against humanity and move forward. You said something along those
No,
lines.
no, no. I didn't say cover up crimes against
No,
humanity.
no, but no, that's that. I'm not getting at that though.
Okay.
Like, but you made a point around about a crime against humanity. My concern with the point being, we get this disclosure that you're talking about, is that going forward, it starts the next great crime against humanity. There's an assumption. Well, it's all assumptions because we don't know that all those leaders come out and say, yeah, 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 this is right. President X or Prime Minister Y, whoever comes out and confirms it. What if they don't? What if they don't back it up? What if that person's left on their own? There's then the question of what evidence actually comes out from the disclosure president. Let's say, again, I'll use Trump, it's the easiest one to use. What if they don't give us everything?
Well, yeah, look, yeah, I've been asked that question. Look, disclosure is nothing more than the confirmation we're not alone, which is a big deal.
Yep.
Okay. It will galvanize the world's people in a way that we've never probably seen. In other words, you're going to have more people addressing and thinking and viewing and getting excited about something in the shortest amount of time ever in the human race. And it's compelling. And it's happening in a time when the ability to communicate information about this extraordinary thing could never be more grand. I mean, you could communicate worldwide like this. Everybody on the planet could share. You could immediately share your view on this to somebody on the other side of on the planet that happens to be in your Facebook group, whatever. Right. So the ability to engage the information and get it out could not be better. That may not be a coincidence. Okay. We also have AI, which is going to give us an ability to deal with the information and a lot of the implications in a way we would be would be hampered without it. So disclosure happens. Everybody knows that there's ETs here, and they want to know more about it. All right, and they're going to be intensely focused. Right, meaning they really want to know about it. So whatever you decide to do, however you decide to deal with it, if you want to throw in a little lie here or misrepresent here or hold back something that really should come forward, though under the Disclosure Act, it'd be against the law, and maybe take your science project and go off somewhere and hide and keep doing it. You have to understand hundreds of millions of people, if not more, are watching you. Every government, every head of state, every process, every statement on this issue from that point forward is going to have the world's attention. And so if you want to play games with it, right? And see, how can I commit a crime against humanity based upon the fact that we're not alone anymore? You're going to have to do it very publicly. And so when you talk about a paradigm shift, which we've had a number of them in the science world, it's a little harder to point out paradigm shifts in worldview, but they can happen. And this is going to be a worldview paradigm shift, as Danny Sheehan has spoken at length about and will write about. God knows, he probably have a couple of books. A paradigm shift is of so profound nature that the very power of it almost precludes screwing around with it afterwards. Okay. Now, in science, it's a little easier to talk about that. So, Newtonian physics, when it broke, was a major paradigm shift in science, and same thing with quantum physics, and to some degree atomic physics. These are paradigm shifts in the scientific understanding of extraordinary significance. And so, in the aftermath of something of that extraordinary level, people that want to say, nah, 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 this quantum mechanic thing, nonsense, okay? I got another theory or whatever. We're going to go this way. We're going to go that way. I don't believe it, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to work. Now, when you're down at small stuff, if you have little things happening, whatever, anybody can challenge it. Everybody can make a big deal. But a paradigm shift means you have irreversibly entered a whole new era and world. And by and large, the vast numbers of humans that are involved in that are going to go with it, whether they want to or not. They're going to be carried forward in that tide. And in this case, the tide is a positive one. We have had many tides in the history of the human race that were awful, red tides. And there was nothing you could do. They were going to take you where they're going to take you. The tide that led to World War I, World War II, whatever. This is a good one, right? This is a tide that can take us an extraordinary place. But how do you get a tide powerful that would do that? Well, you finally address the fact that we've never been alone in this galaxy. This galaxy is so much more than we could have ever dreamed, so much bigger, of course, than we ever imagined. Even now, too big to comprehend. It is transcendent, okay? And for that reason, I'm not too worried about the post-disclosure world. There will be some instability. Naturally, there'll be some instability. I'm hoping that nobody, for whatever reason, it upsets them to the point where they get a little, trigger happy with a nuke. Okay. And I've said this many times. And this will put things maybe in a more moderate perspective for you. And that is, if we don't have disclosure, we're going to have a nuclear war. I'm absolutely certain of it. Absolutely going to happen. Okay. If we have disclosure, we may still have a nuclear event, right? That could trigger a full-out war. In other words, it's not likely to start with 200 missiles being launched. It'll start because somebody does something stupid or an accident and it escalates. But we could still have a nuclear situation, a nuclear event happen post-disclosure. But the difference is, in the post-disclosure era, it is much more likely we will be able to deal with that we will deal with it in a much different way because we're in a much different place with a different worldview. Whereas if we have that nuclear event happen like tomorrow, pick a theater, we're going to deal with it in our traditional way that we've been relying on for 12,000 years, which is to relaunch whatever, take vengeance until the whole thing blows up. In other words, in this particular paradigm, it's going to go badly. And the next paradigm, there's a better chance that it will not go badly. And one of the ways that some people think about this, because they don't have a lot of understanding of the phenomena, they think about it this way: if we launch the nuclear weapons, the ETs will turn them off. They can apparently turn off weapons, right? And they'll just neuter them, right? They'll just fall down, right? Just a falling missile, and save us. That's kind of another version of what I'm talking about, but a little more risky. And obviously, if the ETs intervene and turn all the missiles off, I guess you could say that's disclosure. That would be disclosure. We'd be in the post-disclosure world pretty much right away and very happy. Hey, you turned the missiles off and you saved us. We love you. Come on down, have a piece of cake. But that's simplistic. It's naive. But it's understandable because the government is doing everything it can to keep us as naive as possible on many things. So that's a very naive version of what I'm talking about. Let whatever's going to befall the human race, and it may be bad, let it be in the post-disclosure world, not in the current paradigm, which we have screwed up 18 ways to Sunday and is not particularly very constructive and it's very dangerous.
And I think in that scenario where people hope that ETs would save us from any kind of nuclear war, the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would be incredibly annoyed at them, picking and choosing when they divert weapons of mass destruction and when they don't. Let alone, and that's from a very human perspective, but how many nuclear tests happen underwater or underground every single year? And wildlife, marine life.
Two couple of thousand, and
Yeah.
then they stop. Guess what? I think China is about to restart testing, and that could easily start spreading. We could have 4 or 5 countries doing testing. By the way, those 3,000 nuclear tests, air, ground, underwater, pretty much responsible for a major increase in cancers. If you look at the cancer statistics going back to the 40s, it virtually parallels the nuclear weapons testing that was going on and putting radioactive crap up into our.
Almost like it was a bad idea, regardless. Yeah.
So again, they're thinking about starting that up again. Need to do some more testing. I'm just, what can I say? I'm almost 80. I don't have any kids, I don't have any grandkids, so it's like I don't really have a dog in this hunt, right? It's more of a, well, it's just more of a trying to
Steve,
do something
look at
right.
a couple of years ago, they had the idea they were going to detonate a nuclear weapon on the moon to see what happened, and you're like, I mean, that could be one that really brings upon disclosure one way or another, you know. But I want to bring us back, Steve, to
Yeah.
the hearings chat. Believe it or not, I'm only on my third page of 11 of notes. So we've covered a lot of ground. I say you have covered a
You
lot
can
of
put it out
ground.
in three. You can put it out in three parts. Let's roll. I got nothing to do today.
Well, I don't know if you saw, but in the last 24 hours, a rumour started online that the hearings were going to be postponed until November. Had you seen that? And that came from Eric Davis. So Eric Davis online on LinkedIn, I believe, commented to someone, the hearings won't happen in September. They're going to be November. No one wants to come forward at the moment. So Anna Paulina Luna, yesterday, as we record this on Wednesday, on Tuesday, Anna Paulina Luna had to come out and quash these and say no. She actually made a slight slip up and said she had never heard of Eric Davis. Then she deleted her tweet, given she literally a couple of months ago had sat beside him and listened to him talk about multiple alien species in that hearing. But she had to correct that. And I wonder, what's your thoughts again on we've got this hearing now confirmed, and you've got a congresswoman, a well known player in the UFO game and physicist, Eric Davis, having these issues or misinformations or corrections happening online and almost petty spats. If we look at a few weeks ago, Luis Elizondo and Anna Paulina Luna very publicly having a spat online as well.
Yeah.
How does that play into how this looks in the eyes of the public?
Well, let's see. The internet, social media platforms on the internet is, just imagine 10 billion backyard fences, and people are chatting to each other over the fence. A little gossip, little whatever. How was your day? My day was nice. It's a massive information matrix that is essentially without any significant management. There's some, but not a lot. And so everything on the internet has to be viewed that way. And so, and people can get things wrong and then tell somebody else and then come to somebody else, right? And it can spread. Usually, if you get something wrong and you tell your neighbor, by the time the neighbor tells it to two other people, they realize, that's wrong. Now, by the time somebody figures out it's wrong, it may have already been viewed by, I don't know, 20 million people or something, right? Share, right? You want to share, okay? Repost, share, all this kind of stuff. So it's a massive, I don't know, what am I thinking of? What's the word? I can't find the word. So you need circumspection, you need an education, you need to be able to think and a lot of other things in order to navigate the internet to minimize uh, embarrassment. Okay, but regardless, expect to be embarrassed. If you're going to engage the internet, you're going to do something stupid. You're going to say something that's not quite right, right? And because you've got first, second, third, fourth, fifth hand stuff, it's going to happen. And the other thing that I'll mention is the individuals whose whole career they're now of age, right? Kind of near my age, is certainly up there. They're in 60s, 70s. They spent almost all of their working professional life where they may be very accomplished, esteemed scientist, decorated inside, military or intelligence guy, whatever. All these people, they weren't on the internet, right? Even when the internet showed up, they still weren't on the internet. And so very late now in their lives, they're kind of jumping in. And so they really they're like a fish out of water. They really struggle with it because it's just nothing like anything they've dealt with before. It is the wild west of information. And we know how wild it is because we know it can be boticized, it could be manipulated, it can change elections because it's possible to put out mass information and so forth. So just beyond human frailties of like, I thought I had it right and I put it up and then somebody passed it. There is a systemic use of the internet by well-funded entities designed to make us think something is true when it's not. And then, in case that's not enough for you, the rise of AI means that, of course, now you can put things up on the internet in which you can mimic the person's voice almost perfectly. You can mimic their image, and now you got people saying stuff you think is true. They aren't even saying it. So it's a mess. So what can I say? I think more and more we're getting this, and so we need to not jump off our 8th floor balcony because of something that somebody said on the internet. So Eric Davis got it wrong because he heard it from somebody else. Doesn't matter. The fact he's Eric Davis, people give it a lot of gravitas. No, he's no different than anybody else. I don't care how important you are, how experienced you are, how smart you are. I assure you, you can get something wrong when it comes to the internet, which is mean be careful what you repost, right? And try to verify what you can whenever possible, and avoid that. So it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. It's not even important in a sense. Okay. And as far as Luna, and this is a side, it's not important. This is just a side thing. I was at that meeting. Luna was there for a while, right? But then she had to leave. I think, if I'm not mistaken, she wasn't there when Burleson asked Davis that question, and he started talking about the types of aliens. But I could be wrong about that. But again, she was there for a while. She had to leave. Just because they're in a panel together doesn't mean they've been dining out, right, or swapping tweets for the last year. And so she just didn't know who he was. No big deal. Again, in our age, everything you do is going to be seen and scrutinized, and you're going to get, tweaked, little trolling, unavoidable. Get used to it, right? Which reinforces something I said earlier. If everything you do now is going to be seen and known, scrutinized, and criticized, don't do anything really stupid. Because if you want to go out and really do something bad, right? I'm going to do this. Okay. People are going to find out, they're going to see it, and they're going to come back at you. And the stupider or the more awful the thing you're thinking of doing, the worse the consequences. The internet and this whole neurosphere that we created now, where everybody communicates with everybody, in a sense, has its downsides, but it has its upsides. And while this is the greatest disinformation technology ever created, it is also the greatest fact-checking technology ever created. And so it's all about how you use it, but it is what it is. And so it will shape the post-disclosure world, but I think very positively, because overall, everybody's going to want the truth post-disclosure. And so the demand for the truth is going to be at a level that's never been seen before. In other words, everyone wants the truth, right? If you're going to put out the agricultural numbers, I would prefer to have the truth, but it's not like tens of billions of people, whatever, millions of people focused on the agricultural number. But on this issue, post-disclosure, billions of people are going to want the truth. They're going to be focused on what's going to be said. And so in that case, not telling the truth would be a very unwise thing to do. I know some will do it. Even this late in the game, the Department of Defense put out a complete piece of nonsense, a total lie, information, totally lies, to the Wall Street Journal to get 2 articles out, in order to push back against what's going on. So yeah, and guess what? The internet savaged the Wall Street Journal for this, right? I didn't savage the writers, though I actually was interviewed by one of the writers. I even gave him Robert Salas's contact information, and so he interviewed Robert Salas, and then they tried to call Robert Salas a liar. So even now, the DOD thinks that, yeah, we're just going to put out a bunch of slop, and everybody will buy it, and we'll buy some time. No. Now every time these institutions will lie, they're undermining their credibility, and they're going to pay a price. Now, as they get to understand that, as they get more aware of this, they may realize Jesus. Now, in the political arena, though, we have a lot of work to do. because in the political arena in the United States, lying has become the standard, right? It's the go-to standard. Everybody is lying at everybody else in order to get an advantage. Now, I don't say everybody's lying or they were always lying. I'm simply saying that this battle of ideas is serviced by misrepresentations by everyone to one degree. And so truth is like taking major hits. In other words, if you've got two major parties that are willing to operate from a strict truth basis and just present their views, I think things should proceed pretty well. But once it turns into a battle of disinformation, it's not going to go well. And then when the US government just systemically has been undermining trust in government for decades by lying, one administration after the other in various ways, and then the ultimate lie about the presence of the non-human presence, which is now 80 years on, has undermined trust. Trust has fallen to the point where now people won't even believe the truth when it comes out. So in the political arena particularly, and in the social contract, we have some serious problems there. But again, ending the truth embargo transcends these issues in the moment, and will continue to transcend them for quite a while. And my hope is that this massive paradigm shift in worldview and in science, to some degree, scientific understanding, is so big that it will actually push civilization and nations into a truth zone where the truth becomes the real default position. And the desire for the truth is huge. The willingness to fact check is huge. And people are pretty much, that's what they expect. And if you don't deliver it, they will then, give you an incentive to not do that, not lie anymore. And we end up in a far more truth-based society, which we've got to get to. We cannot continue to build civilization on lies. Lies will lead to war and destruction, annihilation, pain, suffering, the zombie apocalypse. And yet right now we're drowning in lies. And we're drowning in lies. And so somebody's got to empty the swimming pool and refill it. I think that's the way the truth embargo could go. This may sound ridiculously optimistic, but it's possible to make a case for it. And I don't see any other options. If anybody's got another thing that will kind of take us where we need to go and save us from all the awful shit that we're headed for, hey, good. Let's hear it. I want to hear it. That'd be great. Maybe we could do that. But for now, I'm real comfortable with this approach and this analysis.
So I want to get into asking you a question, Steve. You mentioned lawyer Danny Sheehan before. Now, I don't know if you saw a few days ago, he was on the show Paris in Politics or Paris on Politics, talking about the UAP Disclosure Act. He mentioned that if it's passed, of course, all information 25 years or older will be released to the public. Furthermore, anything that's newer will undergo the process through the review board, with that approval to release it to the public over the course of 7 years under the UAP Controlled Disclosure Campaign Plan, so we can adjust economically, geopolitically, etc. How do you react to that idea that there's a scenario here where things are disclosed, but we get it over that 7 year span?
That's unavoidable. You've got 80 years of engagement of this issue within the military and intelligence world. It's massive. Got programs you've that are on various levels of classification and so forth, and we still are in the middle of a nuclear arms race, high threat of nuclear war. So, and by the way, since you brought it up, let me quickly update your viewers on this, where we are right now, which is very good. I mean, September is going to be a watershed month, in spite of the rest of the chaos. First of all, I talked about what happened with various members of the administration coming on a podcast and talking, which is not that long ago. But here is where we are now. The third, what I call full hearing, proper hearing, will be held at the on the 9th. It's going to be in the visitors section of the Capitol, which is massive. So we could have a huge audience. And we got 4 witnesses. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be broadcast substantially, maybe by multiple entities. And meanwhile, in this week that we're in right now is when the Senate is going to be voting on the UAP Disclosure Act. Remember, notice the name. That wasn't an accident. That Schumer and Rounds called it the Disclosure Act. Okay. And I think that they weren't just referring to small d disclosure, which it is, but also to the fact that the Disclosure Act is important if we're going to have capital D disclosure. You need that in place. So, and this is the 3rd attempt to get it. It will be voted on the Senate. And then the week after that, the week after the hearing, it's going to be introduced in the House, my understanding. And that's fine. But more importantly, it's going to have a sponsor. Eric Burleson, who is now Representative Burleson of Missouri, is now pretty much leading the charge. He's kind of got that portfolio, and that's fine. And so that's important. And now, and they want other co-sponsors. There wasn't a lot of time. I went to a couple offices, but I mean, look, if there's going to be co-sponsors, Eric probably needs to reach out. But I'm certainly others are probably bringing it up. So I hope there might be other co-sponsors. But let's just say there's one. The importance of that is this: when you submit a bill to the House, the majority leader can kind of decide whether it's going to go anywhere. They can squelch it pretty quickly if they don't want to. They want to. If it has a co-sponsor, it's going to get more consideration. Its prospects of actually going to a vote are better. If the co-sponsor is of the speaker's party, good. And so that is the case here. So maybe we'll have a couple of co-sponsors, which raises the possibility that the damn thing will go to a vote and even get passed, in which case the UAP Disclosure Act in all of its glory, with all of the bells and whistles that we wanted, not just the half that was passed a couple years ago, but really the full package is what we need. And it's pretty much everything we need. Could be law by the end of the year. Right? Still a few months away, and that would be very important. Now, that doesn't mean disclosure has to wait for that act to be passed, or it doesn't have to wait for it to be signed or go into effect. But if it were passed, meaning, okay, the only thing that prevents it from going into law would be signing by the president, right? And so the president is the one that decides if it becomes law. At that point, once it's passed by both House and Senate and sent back to White House, that kind of plays nicely into the scenario we discussed earlier. Because if you're thinking about doing what I think they're thinking about doing, which is end this truth embargo, then signing that bill is ideal. And ideal, right? So you've signed the bill. You're the president, signed the bill. You could have stopped it and forced it to go back, on a veto. You could have stopped it, but you signed the bill, and then not long after that, all right. So we could see and of course, the president technically, usually the NDAA is not signed until later in the year. So I'm not sure how this might play out. I'm simply saying that both the putting that bill into play and the Disclosure Act that we discussed is in the hands of the president, the same man, the same person. All right. And so this is going to be quite a month. And that's what we know is taking place. There may be more. All right, we'll see. Now, let me see. Take me please repeat that question. The question that launched me into that.
So the question was around it playing out over 7 years and having that kind of longer term disclosure.
Gotcha. And so what is important is that the act is in place, the process is underway, and the public now knows it's going to get the truth. That's what's most important. In other words, the embargo is over, right? But that doesn't mean that everything just pops out. It just means that the barrier to the stuff coming is over. Embargo's over. So we already have some information that's actually brought forward under the original bill that was changed back in 2023. And there's actually an archive at the National Archives, the UAP archive. I haven't gone over and looked at it, but it's there. So you can go to the National Archives online. You can check out the UAP archive, and you can see the stuff that's kind of accumulating. It's not going to rock your world, but it's, good faith. Okay, fine. But if that bill is passed, well, it happens fast. So as you say, the bill says everything 25 years or older technically can come forward. I think that's what the intent is, but my guess is it's still going to be reviewed. I still think the review board is going to check it. But I think what it means is that while it will probably still get checked, because you never know, right? Something 25 years or older might be, it'll still get reviewed, but let's just say that it's going to be first in line. They're going to be, everything 25 years or older is going to be right at the front of the line to start going through the review process, which gets things going. Okay. All right. And then, of course, we then start getting to the other material. I don't think it means that something that's new can't be presented to the process, be put into the pipeline. It just means that 25 years has a special status. So you're going to have this pipeline filling up. It's going to be coming forward. It's going to be looked at by the review panel. If it is postponed, there will be a something logged into that effect, something that demonstrates kind of the reason why and we will know that. And we also know under the bill that gets reviewed relatively periodically so that it can be reviewed. Okay, now it's time to come forward. Fine. And then other stuff is passed on through. And so people are seeing this whole thing unfold. And that is what is important. Now, so the idea that it might take 7 years to get everything out that they have, every doc, everything, every treaty, whatever the hell, all, it's hardly shocking, right? There's a lot of stuff there. And it does have to be vetted. It's not like they just open the doors and invite all the journalists in. But let me just suggest this for those that are not thrilled about that. I'm going to suggest that those that are setting this up, passing the law, and planning on the post-disclosure compliance with the bill may be overestimating or underestimating the pressure that is going to be on them from 300 million Americans and hundreds of, several billion people around the world. And we're not the only country that's going to be under pressure. All right. Meaning, okay, you were saying 7 years. I think we need to speed it up. Okay. And they're going to have a lot of pressure saying, get going, keep it going. What's this? What's that? I want that out. And so I think it's going to shorten that time frame. And then there's a second aspect in that's our time frame. Other nations have stuff too. And so they may say, yeah, we're bringing this up now, and we have it too. It's kind of awkward. And so we have the same thing, but then that nation put it up. So overall, I'm going to favor a shorter time frame than is being projected, not a longer time frame. And that's not a criticism. It's not a criticism at all. Who even in the government, but with all their supercomputers and everything, and they've been gaming this outcome, I assure you, for decades. Let me repeat that. Inside where it matters, they have the computers to do the whole game thing, right? In which they put in all the variables. How will disclosure work out? What'll happen? And they've been gaming it for a long time. They're not idiots, and it's not like they're going to be blindsided by this. And so I'm going to assume, though, it's going to be shorter than they think. So again, but whatever length of time it is, as long as the process is continuous, and there's also another matter for those that are truly righteous involved in this, inside, that know to the extent that any of this ET tech has enormous potential implications on the problems we're dealing as a civilization, meaning we desperately need that tech tomorrow. or yesterday, there's going to be a lot of pressure to get the tech out, right? And obviously there's going to be more legislation. I assure you, the UAP Disclosure Act is only the beginning to say, okay, we got to get it out, but it's got to be handled in the right way. This is dangerous. There's dangerous aspects, whatever, but let's get it out and let's get it in development so we can address some of our very pressing problems. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the tech. So what gets in other words, it would be fun game to predict what will be the last critical information that comes out under the UAP Disclosure Act regarding the ET presence, the very last thing that makes it out for whatever reason. They just couldn't bring it out sooner. It'd be kind of fun to know that. And then there is this, for those that hate being impatient, and I don't blame them. As I've said countless times, there's an agenda here. The ETs aren't just hanging around, screwing around, and whatever, they're doing this, they're doing that. Who knows how it's going to work out? No, there is an agenda on their end, right? And I think that agenda says to me that, we get disclosure underway, they're going to do something. And I think it's open contact. I don't know what else they could do. I don't see anything bad. Why would they go bad then? Right? They're doing so much to drive the disclosure process forward. Right. And if they really don't want us to disclose to ourselves, they're certainly not hurting that process. They're helping it. And so I think we have open contact in 2 years. So you can imagine how that would accelerate the truth process worldwide, multi-nations, if now we're in open contact with the ETs. And that's 2 years out. I think it's 2 years. I just feel it. I just think that makes it 2027. So again, I'm not worried about a super prolonged discovery process here. It is in our best interest to get this stuff out as quickly as possible worldwide, because the sooner we can get well into the post-disclosure era, the sooner we can start sitting down at tables, nation to nation, multiple nations, whatever, in a reformed UN or a brand new world organization, and addressing every single existential threat to us between nations and putting them aside. Start diplomatically working our way out of this hellhole, which we can do. It's a matter of will. It's progress is not so much a matter of wisdom. It's mostly a matter of will. We've got wisdom. We haven't had the will. I'm hoping that disclosure suddenly injects will into the entire human civilization. So again, this was. I'm not worried about long time. And again, if I'm right about this, boy, the next 2 or 3 or 4 years are going to be unbelievable. Right? You're going to get up in the morning going, I want to see the news. Get the news on. I can't wait to watch the news. Right? Right? That's not the way it is now.
No. What I want to do is get some listener thoughts here. As soon as the announcement came out, Steve, about the witnesses, I posted it on a few different platforms, and I'm going to head over to Patreon and read you some of the initial comments from people. So immediate reactions. Some of them I'm going to get some thoughts from you as well. I'll read through and I'll get you to come in now and again. Jonathan Chapman said it, looking forward to George Knapp. Hope he has some new info or evidence to share. He kept it quiet on today's Weaponized. David Tinson said it's nice to see George get his moment. He deserves it more than anyone. Fingers crossed this hearing is more than a box ticking exercise. Dub Snapper said George Knapp isn't a UFO hook either, or cook, I think he meant to say. He went out on a limb decades ago when his colleagues made fun of him and the topic. Monette Cortez, a pretty well-rounded group. I like George being there. Fun Size Phil, great name. Knapp's an interesting one. Considering his original ties to Lazar and currently to Corbell, I would have thought someone like Richard Dolan would be better suited to that commentary role. Stephen Davies and a few other folks have suggested George Knapp maybe a placeholder for someone, but I don't think that's how the hearings work like this, is it? And that was suggested last time with Schellenberger. Like, Knapp will be there.
Well, Dolan will have his day. The fact that they brought Knapp in is confirms to me Dolan will have his day, and some others. To the extent that these committees recognize that the people that have been carrying the water for decades on this issue, without Nobel Prizes or three degrees from major universities or incredibly wealthy, whatever, that they must be recognized, or it's just a travesty. So as far as George, hey, I'm sure I think George Knapp could just come on by himself. They could start at 10 in the morning and go a couple of days, and he wouldn't repeat himself. I mean, there's so much he could present uh, that it's going to be significant, and so it's huge that he's there. And by the way, if there's anybody, there are a number of journalists in this field that deserve Pulitzer prizes. There's no question. I think Leslie Kean deserves one. Certainly Blumenthal deserves one. There's a few other that are kind of getting in that zone. But George, nah, Jesus Christ, he deserves a Pulitzer Prize. 40 years of journalism on this, written, video. Uh, the body of work is incredible, and so he deserves a Pulitzer Prize. And I think he'd probably get it. Post disclosure, he'd get it, and that would be nice. There's a lot of people deserve some recognition here, right? And I hope the American people understand that's important. And we say, well, why? Why should I care if these people? Yeah, they made the choice to do this. It wasn't easy. Why should I recognize them? Because if you don't recognize, that's why you see these awards back there. These are just some of the awards that I wasn't able to give out at my 6X conferences back in 2004 to 10 because they were deceased in some cases, and I couldn't reach family, or they were alive, but I wasn't able to get it to them. Okay, but I gave out something like 36 awards to try to honor the people in this field because who was going to do it? And the nature of the X conference was such that it really was very conducive to being able to give it a number of various awards. And so the point I'm making is that the mainstream isn't going to reward us, not yet, but we can reward ourselves. But the reason the mainstream awards must come, and the American people must understand this, if you don't show the acknowledgement and appreciation to these people that do this kind of thing, then it's less likely other people are going to do that kind of thing, right? In other words, you just say, hey, you slaved away, you went bankrupt, right? You spent years, you were frustrated, but you were right. But no, go away, right? That's fine. Let's get out of our way. No, you're basically sending a message. Don't sacrifice like this. Don't do this. Don't challenge the state. And so, if you're going to reward anybody, the people. Reward the people that are operating against government desires, that have to pay those prices, and make sure that they're acknowledged. Don't forget about them, even when the ultimate outcome is after they're dead. Acknowledge them. And there's so many, and of course, the bigger the issue, the more people to acknowledge. I mean, some activism is fairly low scale. There's a whole lot of these people in this field going back all the way to 47 that deserve major acknowledgement in the post-disclosure world, so that other people will see, if I take this on as a citizen, if I go after this truth as a citizen or whatever, at least maybe I'll get acknowledged for it. There's the appreciation. I belabored that, but that's the point on that.
Andy had said, a different Andy, excited about George Knapp being on there, a lot of potential to steer the conversation to specific places. Claire said, I was initially very, very excited to see George Knapp on the panel. However, after a few minutes of reflection, I'm now unsure. Your average Joe may do some research and very quickly write him off as a UFO kook, but at least being sat alongside credible veterans gives him some gravitas. Excited to see what they all have to say. Matthew said, are any of these individuals first-hand witnesses of UAP retrievals and or reverse engineering programs? Because I think that's what's necessary to get mainstream media attention or to move the issue up the political agenda in the US or anywhere else for that matter.
Can I interject there?
Yeah, why not?
I'm the one paying attention. It's already got mainstream media attention. We're up to our yin yang in mainstream media attention, so we got it already. Secondly, this is not a democratic process, right? It's not like George Knapp is going to testify, and the value of that testimony is based upon how many people think it's valuable versus how many people don't. No. Okay. I guarantee you there's going to be people that'll throw shade at anybody that testifies, period. I don't care who they are. There's people, I don't like this. That's social media. Social media is nothing but a giant, kind of information washing machine. Okay, it's not irrelevant, and you can definitely learn a lot from it, but you have to be judicial. All right. Now, a poll, a highly significant, well organized, well funded poll, can sometimes give you a solid sense of what people think about something. And guess what? The majority of people could think this, and it's wrong. Okay. So again, I don't think he worries, and neither do I worry. I never worry about being trolled or who doesn't like me or who does. uh, the people that Matt, I say not that Matt, the people that are knowledgeable and involved in this and trying to get the outcome that is going to serve not only the American people but the world's people, they will understand and know right away how important George's testimony is. He doesn't need validation from the internet and some collective, and there will be plenty of people that will praise him. And the way I go, here's how I handle myself on the internet: if people are praising me, I go, thank you. Like, and if people are not praising me, I don't say anything at all.
You know what? Jeremy Corbell has a wonderful phrase: "Praise and blame, it's all the same." And it's not unfair. It's just it's a good way to look at it.
Well, that's why I
Um,
don't think that. I don't think praise and blame are the same, because if they were the same, you'd treat them all the same. But no, no, praise is way better than blame, right? Uh, and you should always acknowledge praise, but blame is part of the game, and the best attitude is to not acknowledge, not fight, not debate, not respond, not defend. Um, and so you don't treat him the same. But I get the point that he's making. Um,
it's opinion. Like praise and blame is opinion. Because I've seen people praise things online that do not deserve praise, and that's my opinion. But I would strongly argue that that does not, whatever it is I'm talking about here, I've got things in mind, don't deserve praise. They very much deserve the opposite. However, people will praise them because of low standards or a certain narrative or a certain agenda.
Sure.
So for me, that's where I can appreciate praise and blame being the same. Because conversely, someone trolling something, one man's trolls another man's, person that's right, whatever you want to call it. Because actually, what they're saying is correct. They've just done it in the wrong way. So I can get where that statement comes from.
Well, there's first person, second person. Look, if somebody says something on the net about whatever, and you are a third person, you're a second person, right? And yeah, in a sense, somebody praises somebody or praises a thing or blames it. Uh, it's basically just two assessments, two opinions. So it's basically the same. It's information, and if you want to have an understanding, you vet it. Right? So you vet it. Is that praise justified? Let me check it out. Fact check it. Is it blame justified? I'm referring to how the individual, the target of it, right? The target of it. It's less the same in that regard, because if you are the target of the praise or the blame, then I'm suggesting you respond in two very different ways. And also, there's this: if you are right about something, if you are doing the right thing, praise is a very helpful, positive force forward. Okay. Blame is a smaller, but yet force against. All right. But it's asymmetric. By and large, if you're right, if you're doing the right thing, the effective praise is more powerful than the effective blame. Now, if you're pulling a scam, if you really got something nefarious going, then blame is going to dominate there, and praise not so much. But again, in terms of activism, if you're doing the right thing, praise is pretty powerful, blame not so much. And so again, in that sense, from that personal perspective,
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. I think my thing I was thinking, Steve, and you probably avoid it, but there are some YouTube channels, not just UFOs, but across various topics that just make things up on a daily or weekly basis. And I mean truly, I know
Oh
you'll be shocked to hear that. Yeah, they lie and make stuff up, and people
God.
watch it and say that was great, and then the following week they just completely ignore what they've made up, or they double down, or they go back on it, and it's like, for the love of Christ.
Look, if you
But
want
hey
if you
ho,
want precision, go to college and study science. Go to a fine school. Use the textbooks, right? And do the scientific method. Precision. The fact that we can go to the moon. or build a supercomputer is based upon an enormous amount of science over many, many decades and hundreds of years, a scientific method which produces almost absolute truth, right? That's why I kind of went in science, because the rest of it was just, what the hell? And so, but if you're not in science, if you're in the world of human affairs, social sciences, even history, whatever, it's not like that. And so it's much tougher. Uh, and that's why when you have a situation in a society where science is being undermined, being threatened, being trolled, and what have you, what you're seeing is people undermining the one thing the humans have been able to come up with that is able to produce truth so accurate. You can use a whole bunch of those truths to assemble a rocket that will actually go to the moon and return. If you try to assemble a rocket based upon, say, polling the internet, it's not going to go anywhere. In fact, it's just going to blow up. And so, as we undermine science in any way, we are undermining the most significant thing we have done in the world of gathering truth, and that is not going to help. That is just going to make everything worse, everything harder. Science should be sacrosanct, but I'm afraid it's been politicized. It's been politicized in the past, going back thousands of years. Believe me, it's a problem that science has always faced. And one of the things we need to fix in the world that is coming in order to get to a place that's not going to be catastrophic. And the list is an incredibly long list, I can assure you, but kind of near the top of that list is we must fix the politicization of science.
Let me go through some more of these comments, because there's a couple of them I'd quite like your opinion on. Matthew had finished off saying he hopes to be proven wrong and that these go wrong, these go well, these hearings. There were a few comments. Casey said, "Can we stop inviting journalists to these hearings? Last time, all it did was cause confusion and drama, and ultimately second or third hand information. If these are more pilots with incredible stories, I have a feeling this will be the worst hearing yet. Fravor has a story with other witnesses and data to back it from radar, along with video captures by another pilot. If that wasn't enough for the Congress or American people, then surely these stories can't move the needle further." Care to comment on that one?
There's an intelligent person there. That's a intelligent statement. One, they haven't even testified yet, so we really don't know how powerful the testimony is going to be. Secondly, this is a process underway. It is a process. In other words, the whole thing is happening. I've said this a million times. Some people view the hearings as disclosure, in a sense, is another key disclosure process, meaning we're going to learn this, we're going to learn that, we're going to learn this, and we're going to learn that, and we're going to keep learning stuff, and eventually we're going to be able to, oh, there's ETs here. Or the government will say, wow, I had no idea. Based upon that testimony and stuff, I guess there's ETs here. No, that's not that at all. It has never been about that. And that's one of the most confusing and difficult things that is creating indigestion and anxiety disorders amongst the public. The government knows about the ETs. They've known about them for 80 years. They've investigated them, studied them. They've probably had some live ones. They've had dead bodies. They've been using every resource at their command and all the money at their command, which is, trillions of dollars, to understand every aspect of the ET presence. Okay, they already know this. So if that is the case, what is going on here? Okay, some people think this is part of the real disclosure process. In other words, we need to hold these hearings so people in government will, over at the Pentagon will realize, wait a minute, there's something going on here. I need to write this book so they'll know something going on here. I need to do this activism so no. The reason there is an activist movement is not because they don't know and we need to help them know so they'll do what we think is right, but because they already know, are denying us what they know, and we're trying to get them to end that truth embargo. And so, if that is the case, what's been going on since 2017? This denouement, this final act of the play. What is it? Well, I know what it is. And I understand why people are confused and upset and angry. And they get, why did he do that? Why didn't he say that? What's going on here? We should know that. No, it is a process to bring us to the point where the president can disclose and it will all work out well. All right. Not only that, it's a process. So when disclosure happens, a lot of people that would normally be assailed with a whole lot of criticism will be viewed as, okay, you were helping get it done. You did this, you did that. You're doing the right thing. Yeah, it turns out you knew about it 30 years ago, but it's okay. You're helping. You're part of the solution. You stop being part of the problem and part of the solution. So it's kind of a public relations maneuver. Yeah. So okay, so all right, let's recap. The reason we had to have legislation, the reason we needed to have witnesses starting to come forward, the reason we had to further involve the Congress, which has been completely out of it by and large. The reason all this is taking place, and plus all the media coverage it's generating, and the public awareness it's generating, right? Certainly the involvement of Congress, right? Okay. In other words, the judicial branch is not an issue. The judicial branch has never been an issue in terms of disclosure, right? There haven't been any cases going up there that they have voted on or whatever that have severely undermined this process. No, it is the executive branch and the legislative branch. Now, as you probably know, the military intelligence complex is part of the executive branch, so they're deep into it. All right. Keeping the legislative branch out of this was key to the truth embargo, right? In other words, we don't want any hearings. We don't want any members of Congress saying anything. We don't want you to engage the issue at all. Stephen Schiff did it way back in the early 1990s. That didn't go anywhere. There were several others that touched on it I know about, but that didn't go anywhere. All right. The last hearing prior to 2023 was 1968. And that was a show hearing, though the people that testified, that had something to say, but it went nowhere. And the next year they closed down Blue Book. Keeping the legislative branch, one of the three branches of government, out of this issue was key. So in order to get to disclosure and do it responsibly, that legislative branch had to be brought in. That's what Mellon knew, and other people that came forward in 2017 knew. And I think Christopher Mellon hopefully will be acknowledged because he's basically led this process of getting the legislative branch in, not alone, but he was key. It was absolutely essential. And so it's taken 7 years. If there were a lot of dramatic things happening in the world that have slowed it down, just, you're competing with everything else. And so 4 pieces of legislation. One is the total package, which has been resubmitted twice, now 3 times. Okay. We've got a task force devoted to it, right? We've had hearings in the House. You've had 7 or 8 other briefings in front of Congress. We have members of Congress going on television saying there's an extraterrestrial presence here. They use different language, going in front of the cameras on Fox News, whatever. That hadn't happened before. So the Congress is now fully engaged in this issue. The media is covering everything. 7,000 articles, mainstream articles, triaged out of 20,000 or more, fringe stuff. On my website right now, go read all 7,000. You'll be very smart. Okay. Why? Because all of that needed to be done to build the platform that the president could step onto, wherever it is. Could be Joe Rogan show, could be the East Room, and say, we're not alone. And end the truth embargo. And it would be appropriate. Everything that followed after that would be appropriate. The Congress is in on it. The Congress is not sitting over there going, what? You can't do that. The Congress has to be involved. There's so much legislation that's going to follow. So much. The press will not be overly shocked. It's like the press is not going to be surprised if the president disclosed tomorrow, right? They're going to say, "Oh, that's a news story," and they'll show up, in thousands at a time. And the rest of the world's population is not going to be particularly shocked because this platform has been built. They've seen it being built. It is to get disclosure, to make it appropriate, make it responsible. Now, the problem and the cognizant dissonance is that they couldn't say that. What could they do? right? Could Christopher Mellon? All right, now wait a minute. Could Marco Rubio way back in 2020, as he's putting in that very first initial piece of legislation that set up the report that started the ball rolling, could he have given a press conference and say, I think we need to pass this legislation. So not much, but we need to put it in the NDA bill, 2021 NDA bill. And the reason we need to do that is because we've got extraterrestrials here. We've got non-human tech here. We're not alone. He can't do that. Obviously, he cannot do that because that's not his job. That is only the president can do that. And so that would create chaos. And so we will one day learn how many people in the United States Congress serving, without getting into staff, just the serving members, over the last 7 years. Some are now gone, but they've been serving at some point in the last 7 years. We may learn how many of them actually knew all along the ET presence was real. And it's going to be a shocking number. And if you want to throw the staff in, it gets even better. And then we're going to learn that the White House knew. Believe me, I am certain that the president has been told that it's true. I think Obama, I know Obama was told, because logic is overwhelming that every president was told. But people mistake being told, being tipped off by an appropriate person who's connected, and being given a massive adult briefing that sets you up to be able to, and that they're not just being told. We know that Truman knew, we knew that Eisenhower knew. You think Kennedy didn't know? And so the president, at minimum, every single president, all 14 of them, every single president that's been in the White House, knew it was real and true. That doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it, and they've chosen not to. I mean, in terms of disclosure, right? Obviously, they have, one way or another, supported the work that had to go on dealing with this issue in all of these programs. They didn't have to know what the programs were, but they were supporting it. They didn't try to out them. Okay. And so they'll do. They just chose not to do anything about it. And that's the way it is now. And so this is hard to people to grasp. I think, well, if they knew, why didn't they just say it? Well, because ending the truth embargo is not some casual thing, right? It's world changing. It has huge implications for every sector of society, and as serving members of Congress, all of the entire everybody working in the Air Force, the intelligence. There's a whole lot of problems and issues that it's going to create. And so, to the extent that you can minimize the disruption that the event is going to happen, the better. And in order to minimize that disruption, you need to set this platform up because, and again, I mentioned this, that to the extent that the public will look back and say, I see what you were doing. The president discloses on Monday, and over the next week, people are just looking at that and they're starting to realize, well, now I get it. Now I see why you were doing all that. And they may say, well, then why didn't you just tell us 7 years ago? Why didn't you tell us 20 years ago? And the answer is because we did not have the basis for it to be done in a way that was going to properly serve the interest of the United States. And that's also in terms of things going on in the world. And the nuclear arms race was number one, right? But eventually it clearly had to end because the global awareness and everything else and the activist movement and all those damn Richard Dolans out there and George Knapps won't leave us alone and all that, we knew it was going to end. But if it's going to end, it had to be done in a proper, responsible way. That's why we didn't tell you sooner, but we told you now. Well, let's move on. And so as people criticize this witness or that witness, and why didn't we get that? Why didn't he say that? No, not, and everything else. They're not understanding that it's not really about what a particular witness has to say. It's about a process that sets up the president. And so any reasonable witnesses testifying under oath in the third major hearing since 1968 is helping the process, right? And it's complicated because some witnesses won't come forward, but there's always going to be witnesses. Now, for me, the penultimate hearing, which is one of my number one goals that I've been working on for a long time, and I wish I had more resources to be more effective, but is And this hearing, I hope, will take place before disclosure. It certainly will take place after disclosure, but the witnesses are dying. I've let this be known. Every single member of the oversight committee, including Luna, all of them, Burleson, every single member of the Senate Intelligence Committee has received the 2 copies of the affidavits and witness statements of these individuals. In other words, we must have a hearing in which the SAC base officers who were firsthand witnesses to the shutting down of our nuclear weapons, impossibly so, in 66 and 67, and there may be some witnesses available for some later ones because the Air Force really tightened up on that problem. There may be witnesses to the Russian shutdowns, but that's Soviet shutdowns, but just those 2. And there are a lot of witnesses, I assure you. Particularly when you talk about the security guys who were up top when actually seeing the craft hovering over as the missiles were being shut down, which of course was being witnessed by the SAC base officers in the silo. Those witnesses need to testify for some very powerful reasons. And that testimony is the most important evidence or testimony you're going to get on this issue, period. More important than somebody sitting down and saying, oh yeah, I helped build the TR-50, what was it, TR-58, whatever the hell it is.
TR-3B.
Yeah, TR-3B, I helped build that. That's cool, right? I interviewed an ET once in captivity. That's cool. No. The shutting down of those nuclear weapons is the most important thing, anything ET related has happened. It has massive implications that will play out soon enough. And the witnesses to that have been trying to get a hearing for 31 years. I mean, trying. They did everything. A major book was published, UFOs and Nukes by Hastings. A doc on the book was put out. Bob Salas wrote 3 books. They testified at my citizen hearing on disclosure, a mock congressional hearing under mock oath in 2013. They held 2 press conferences at the National Press Club. Once got very substantial coverage. No hearing. However, last year, in November, last year, 2020, last year, November, Bob Salas was able to get a meeting with Nancy Mace, who was chairing that hearing, right? And it's on video. You can find it on YouTube, and he was able to present the key elements of the shutdown case to her. She was very responsive, she felt like we'd like to have those witnesses. And of course, she had the witness statements and so forth. There's also videos out there regarding Bob Salas talking and speaking to this. He's been the leader of this movement to get those witnesses the right to testify about the most important event the ETs have ever conducted, as far as we know, in the modern era. And now recently, I was able to, I think, I think he may have talked to another member of Congress. I think he may have talked to Burleson. I'm not positive, but that's something, right? It's not much. However, the idea of these witnesses being available, that they're still alive, some may need some serious help to be able to get in that room and sit down, and that there's more that might come forward once the ice is broken. It is in play across the entire oversight subcommittee and the intel. And now the question is, what are they going to do with it? That's been my number one project. I'm not the only one trying to do this, but it's a personal thing with me. I know Bob, I've known him for a long time. I know how important these men are, the heroes they are, the sacrifices they've made. I know the ones that have tried and then died. So if I can just get that testimony, I will be a very happy guy. Though I want disclosure too. I want that too. But I want to see these men testify. These are heroes of the highest order that have been trying to tell the truth. And one of the principal reasons they haven't told it is not because the Pentagon killed them, which it could do, but it doesn't do that. It's very little of that that's gone on, thank God, or disgrace them until the point they have to move to another country. The Pentagon ghosted them, like they don't exist. Who are you? Whatever. Say nothing, don't respond to anything, and just hope that nothing. So whatever they do, we got nothing to say. So they ghosted them. They ghosted these men for 30 years minimum. They also tried to kind of contain them back in the, going the previous 30 before that, going back to the 60s. They threaten the hell out of the security guys. They then disperse them to, eight points of the planet, to keep them apart. And some of them went to Vietnam, didn't come back, whatever. They just ghosted them. Fine. And these were men who were given the authority. If a code comes in from the White House and both men do their duty, they will turn two keys that will launch nuclear weapons that will essentially change everything for everybody and maybe destroy a good part of civilization and a significant portion of life on Earth because of the aftermath. These are the men that were given that authority. You think they picked them, they just picked them randomly at a local mall? Think of the responsibility they had. Think of how they felt when on two occasions, well, one's in Russia, one here, when, and these witnesses have not come forward yet, I can believe that, they're down there in the silo having a ham sandwich and the missiles start going to launch mode. And they continued up the chain there, and at some point they're about to go into launch and civilizations have come to an end and there's nothing they could do about it. They witnessed that. They were there. Those witnesses are not available as far as I know, maybe dead, whatever. Imagine what that was like. And then they stopped and they went back to shutdown or back to status. That's a message. You talk about shutting the missiles down. You don't think that's a message the ETs were sending? These are the men that we have ghosted, laughed at, diminished at times, whatever it took to prevent them from doing their duty and telling the truth. The DOD is going to have a tough one there. I'm not going to be too awful, but still, I'm going to have to talk about it. Right? I mean, look, when it comes to doing bad things, the list that governments do is so long, and the top of the list is so awful that treating men of valor and righteousness and truth badly is not at the top of the list. And so I need not to get too worked up about it, but they are symbols. Talk about testimony of great power, talk about men of great substance not being able to tell the truth, and that encapsulates pretty much the whole thing pretty well. And you can imagine that on a broad scale basis, that kind of policy of the government is not going to make this country better. It can only make it worse.
Steve, let's finish on some listener questions. I got a lot of them through. Many of them you've covered in the body of the interview, so we won't tread back over old ground. But thank you to everyone who gets in touch when Steve's on the show. Rob says, Jeremy Corbell had threatened to show pre-recorded interviews with whistleblowers if they don't make it into the hearings. Does Steve think that without the weight of political backing, that this subject will ever make inroads into a wider public awareness?
I'm not going to tell other activists, journalists, whatever, how they should conduct their efforts. There's not much more I can say about that. I don't know enough to be able to say appropriate, not appropriate, but the people that are pursuing the truth on this issue, I bow to their efforts. I do what I have to do, and they're going to do what they have to do, and that's the way it ought to be.
Goes to a larger point though, if I'm guessing, just putting two and two together because of the way things have developed today, George Knapp is going to be there to, I imagine, represent people who aren't there. I'm just going to assume that at the moment. In some way, shape or form, I think he does that anyway. If the hearings don't go the way that George and Jeremy have hoped, given the work they do in the background and the whistleblowers that they have said themselves they have taken into the offices of the people, the congressmen and women, the senators, to have these conversations, don't go the way they want. If they've got pre-recorded interviews, do you think that can have a big impact being released to the public without getting them in front of Congress first? Because we saw it with Matthew Brown, didn't we? That's someone a lot of folks maybe expected to appear at this hearing.
Again, I'm just not in a position to be able to say whether that's good or bad. I don't know the interviews. I don't know how that reaction will go. I don't know how they plan to do it. It's not my call, right? And so I'm not going to throw any shade on any of the people that are pursuing this issue. And then secondly, as I told you, It's not about a particular testimony. It's not about a particular witness over that or this or whatever. It's not about how much comes out right now. The government already knows there's an ET presence. A substantial portion of the public knows ET presence. This is a process that has to happen, and it has to be representative as a information gathering and revealing process. I get that. But understand, everything that's being revealed, the government already knows, has known, right? So it's something else. It's going through kind of a ritual, maybe, or whatever. Whatever. It's just a necessary. Um, it's a necessary process that has to happen. The basic process needs to happen in order for the president to step forward. And so if people are wanting the process underway to then increasingly deliver more and more and more profound stuff until somebody finally drags an ET into a hearing room in Congress and says that's what they look like, they're missing the point. They're not understanding what's happening, right? And that's why I tend to just kind of keep that view and approach it that way, and not get into the weeds with respect to who said what and why was it that, and who did why what that person there who would, and somebody misspoke. That's not important. What's important is we keep having hearings, we keep having tons of media coverage of those hearings. Those hearings are broadcast around the world, and members of Congress go on podcasts and talk about UAPs. That's what I'm focused on, and if that's happening, we're making progress, and we are making progress.
Matthew asks, how much of a role does the NHI play in disclosure? Staying hidden while abducting people and colluding with the worst of us seems like a bad sign.
Well, um, there's no question in my mind that the disclosure process has benefited from ET activity, non-human intelligence activity, no question. They don't cloak, right? Sometimes they'll hover right over a friggin' house, right? The contactees, for whatever reason, partially because I think the issue matured, partially because people started writing about it and people were seeing images. All of a sudden, in the late 1980s, uh, contactees started having their memories come back in large numbers. And so you got people talking about, I did this, this happened to me, and that was interesting. I'm thinking that could have been prevented. So crop circles, not all the crop circles are made by college students having a prank. Some of those simply couldn't have been made human. There's reasons for that, but obviously it's not all human, but it's also not all ET. It's a little ostentatious, don't you think? I mean, it's like if you don't want to be known, why would you do that? Why would you draw, all that draw huge attention? And so I believe they have an agenda. I believe they're driving the process. Okay, now they're doing other things. Fine. Contact is no question one of them. The contact that takes a form of an abduction as we define it is significant, non-trivial. Is it more important than the other things? Not necessarily. Is it more important than the nuclear weapons issue? No. Is it awkward? Yes. It's worth pointing out that the consensus I'm getting from people that are focused on the contact world and abduction world, it's less. I think there's a lot less of that going on. I think the reports have gone way, and that doesn't mean memories don't come up, but I mean in terms of new incidents of this, I believe it's substantially less. I could be wrong, right? Seems like the crop circle thing is backed off too. I don't think there's nearly as much. Could be wrong about that, but that's the sense I have. So uh, that said, yeah, I mean, if if you were a professional publicist, you might say, "Look, I'd like to sit down with the ETs, all four or five of the species, and let's discuss public relations. Let's discuss how to do this in a way that is optimal for your image and how you're going to be treated, and any book deals you might get." Yeah, but that's obviously that's not what's happening. We can't do that. They're doing what they have to do the way they have to do it, and we can't really change that. I mean, we can do things that they'll respond differently to, but we can't go up. Look, you can't do that. You can't do no. They do whatever the hell they want. but I'm pretty comfortable with their overall behavior over the last 80 years. Some people are not, but now I'm not a contactee or an abductee. I might think of it differently, but I know plenty of contactees that also feel that way. They're quite happy with the overall situation in terms of their engagement here. And even if they've had a tough contactee experience, which has traumatized them, that doesn't mean that they're just automatically going to condemn the whole ET reality. No. So again, I'm not too concerned about some of these other things. Now, post disclosure is when we will start to sort this out. Contactees will eventually start giving their own testimonies. They'll become very popular. You're going to have books and interviews, and we'll learn a great deal more about the overall contact experience, the full spectrum of it. It'll be listened to, that information will be gathered, assessed, acknowledged, and anything else the ETs have done, we'll probably learn out why they keep taking cattle blood and special tissue. Probably find that out. We'll find out a lot of things, really. I don't see a barrier in any of that. Uh, and we may even, if we get open contact, find out why they're here at all. We may even find out why they turned up 3,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, assuming it's the same ETs. I don't know. We will learn a lot of stuff. And the post-disclosure world is not just going to be about learning something cool the government did. I think it's going to be open contact, and we're going to learn about what the ETs do and what they've done and why they've done it. And that's pretty cool stuff. I mean, let's admit it, right? That's even cooler than going to another Star Trek movie. That's the real deal. And that could be in our future. There is a huge list of things that could be in our future and would have been in our future if the government had not kept the embargo on so long. The beginning of the truth embargo was not a crime. It was not necessarily even a terrible decision. There were ample reasons why they would take that path. I get it. The sin or the awfulness of it is that they kept it too long. They got wrapped into it, tied it up in a nice knot, and they kept it too long, way too long. And that was the mistake. That was the bad part of this. So I'm pretty good about the beginning, and I've said that many times. But how long they've kept it is a travesty and a huge mistake, and it's been costly. It's cost us a lot.
Little Glowing Orb asked a couple of questions. You've covered some of them, but they asked, do you have a counterpart or partner in either Russia or China that are also working forward toward disclosure?
Oh yeah, I got a counterpart certainly in Canada, right?
A little bit closer to home.
Well, yeah, well, closer to home. Victor Vigiani, he's basically the leading activist in Canada. I got a counterpart in Italy. Got a couple of counterparts in the UK. Not in I've been to Russia. I actually gave an interview in Russia to a television station way back in 2018. There are a number of there's some research like Paul Stonehill is a strong researcher of all of the Russian history, but he's not in Russia. You know, let me put it this way: it's not a terrible thing if you're engaging this issue in Russia, but not surprisingly, you don't get famous. In other words, it's like you're not like giving interviews, the international press, and so forth, where it's a little easier to have that media attention. But they're not particularly upset about it. So there is research and some activism, though obviously activism has become more problematic in Russia these days. But I assure you, Russia is loaded with information. The government knows pretty much everything, and a lot's going to come out of that country. All right. Again, same situation with China. Though if you really know a lot about the issue, you know somebody in each country. But UK, you got Nick Pope. He's a movie star, right? He's very defined. You had AJ Gavard, the late AJ Gavard. Boy, that broke my heart. Actually, kind of a star in we've got many stars here in the United States. Italy, definitely. Portugal, I know some people. I did a speaking tour, 20 countries. I'm hoping I can get some supporters to put together another speaking tour for me next year for sure. Want to go back to every country in Europe, hopefully in a post-disclosure world. So yeah, there are counterparts there, but it shouldn't surprise anybody that the focus seems to be dominant in the United States. Not only because we became the major power of a democratic world post World War II, major economic power, major military power, but because the sudden explosion of ET activity appears to have been directly connected to the dropping of the bombs in Japan, and we're the one that dropped those bombs. We're the one that started the development of bombs. We're the one that at one point had the most. We did the most testing. So that if there's a connection between the ET presence or the non-human presence and nuclear weapons, that is one reason why the United States seems to be at the center of this issue more than any other country. Is it fair? I don't know. Does it matter? But yeah, so there's an appropriateness to it. We started this whole damn thing when we dropped those bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm not criticizing per se. A lot of people not happy about it. Some people think it was inevitable, whatever. But a lot of people were vaporized, a lot of civilians, and it was like a milestone event. I mean, we tested them and we built them, and then we dropped them on people. That's a big milestone event. Okay. So we kind of started it. Not that they haven't been around. I think they've been around a long time, but they're hundreds of years where hardly anything happening. But then all of a sudden, 1947, 45 on, boom, off we go. So let's just say that the U.S. really starts the modern era. Then there's a certain appropriateness to the U.S. ending the modern era of the embargo. That's the beginning of the truth embargo. Very shortly after those bombs were dropped in 47. And so the U.S. has kind of a responsibility to end the truth embargo and allow the rest of the countries to finally get involved here. There's a closing of the circle that seems to make sense.
Good answer. Thanks. Sandy says, I recall hearing someone in the disclosure field mention something about these NHI in some type of hierarchy. Will this information be available to the public anytime soon? I'm not too familiar with that one myself, Steve.
So one of the really spectacular things to look forward to post-disclosure is of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of contactees that have come forward, many mostly privately, with correspondence with researchers. And God knows how many that have not come forward. The number could be in the millions. Post-disclosure, let's just say the barrier to coming forward will be very low. And so every researcher interested in the subject in the world will have an unlimited supply of individuals to start talking to, and we can get a very comprehensive picture of what they experienced, who they dealt with, how they acted. We know there's more than one, could be 4, 5, 6. We don't fully know to what degree they're connected or how they're connected, but they definitely look different. Okay. So one of them at minimum looks very much like us, which is one of the most significant things actually that we know about contact. And I can go on about that, but I'm not. And so that information is going to come out. And if we get open contact, we'll get the rest. In other words, I expect if we can get disclosure, it won't be that long before we will actually learn who they are, where they're from, how they have interacted with each other, why they're here, right? To what extent their agendas differ, right? All of that. There's really no barrier to it unless the ETs say, okay, you've disclosed. That's what we wanted. We got some things to do. We're leaving now. We're emptied out our bases, destroyed everything there. We don't want you to see our special files, and we'll be back in 1,000 years and see how you're doing. I mean, if that happens, well, too bad. I don't think that's going to happen. And so all of that information lies ahead, and it's fun to speculate. It's fun to interpret, as long as you don't get mad. But that could be ahead again. The only thing standing, in my view, between us and all of that is a single statement from a head of state. We're not alone. It's true. And I'm going to assist in helping to share that the information that has been accumulated eventually becomes available to everybody.
Ross has 2 questions. Could Stephen be asked, 1, whether he thinks catastrophic disclosure would only be catastrophic for the gatekeepers? And 2, what is the best way to make disclosure more palatable for the gatekeepers?
Look, this whole catastrophic disclosure thing, I'm not fond of it. It's one of those language things that just pops up, comes a meme, and nobody knows what the hell it means. Or maybe this way.
I think we had that chat last
Yeah,
time,
everybody's
Steve.
got a
Yeah, I think
definition.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so it's not helping. Okay. You know, one person's catastrophic disclosure is one person's perfect disclosure, right? And so
Yeah.
it's not useful, right? All we know is disclosure. We have a pretty good idea of how it's happening now. We're seeing the process. We talked about it at length, right? And so if the president walks out tomorrow and does it, you kind of have a sense of where we're at and probably can predict the response to a significant degree. And so I don't see anything catastrophic there. Now, some people think here's one interpretation of this catastrophic disclosure. Okay. And it's a crude one, but it's one. All right. Yes, the president discloses, and then the next day there's a press conference with a whole bunch of Pentagon guys where they explain that there's a 50-50 chance that they're going to just basically take over the planet. Right. We have this possibility they're going to do that. There's nothing we can do about it, and we will be working for them very soon. Or there's all kinds of stuff that's embedded in what they've been doing already that's going to have consequences down the line. In other words, you think things are bad now, they're going to get a lot worse. Catastrophic disclosure. There's one. Okay. Another definition of catastrophic disclosure is it's going to embarrass the hell out of a lot of very important people, politicians, secretaries of secretaries and DOD guys, whatever the hell else, and everybody that's kind of part of the embargo. It's going to embarrass them. It's going to cause disruption. They're going to get bad press. People are going to throw tomatoes at them in public, whatever. That's the public relations problem. And so, in the sense that anybody with respect to this issue has a public relations problem, that's catastrophic. That's a second way. Okay. Third way, catastrophic disclosure. In spite of all the efforts to do it right, to get the legislature involved, to get plenty of awareness worldwide. I mean, there's nobody on the planet doesn't know what UFO means in their own language. Okay. And even what ET means, right? And not only do they not know what ET means, they've seen movies with ETs in them. The number of movies made on the subject is the largest genre in the field. Some of them are multi-billion-dollar films. They've been seen all over the planet, right? I mean, if you're living in the jungle somewhere and never leave, well, no. But the vast majority of the human race has seen more than many movies with ETs in them, and they've been flying through space and going through warp drives and stuff. So what, right? It's not a big deal. But okay, if disclosure takes place, and for whatever reason, it just sets in motion some unknowns. And this is another reason why the truth embargo has been maintained so long. And it gets back to good old Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns, which is a valid point. It's a very valid point, though he probably shouldn't have said it, given he was Rumsfeld. But there's known knowns and known unknowns, and then there's unknown unknowns. And the unknown unknowns are the ones that they really can be a problem. So can you disclose the ET presence to the world and be fully aware of every possible problem that could happen? No. Is it, and are there problems out there that you certainly not even know exist? Yeah. And so there is no certainty here. And so you have disclosure, and it sets up a chain of events like with airplane crashes where 7 things have to happen, but if they all do in a sequence, the plane goes, straight down. You don't know. That's one of the problems that the activist has. Are you doing the right thing? Do you know for a fact it'll work out well? No, of course you don't. And so it's possible that it triggers a chain of events that ultimately leads to very terrible things happening, including a nuclear event, in which case the disclosure was catastrophic. But as I said earlier, and I will continue to say, if you're going to have a nuclear event, you want it post-disclosure, not pre-disclosure. And so that's all I got to say about catastrophic disclosure. You do the best you can. The more the public engages, it's going to be better. You do it authentically. Authenticity is something that nobody knows about anymore, but apparently it was a thing once. And you just authentically, not only just tell the truth, you authentically tell the truth. There's this difference. And you hope for the best. And that's about all we can attempt to do. But is there a guarantee? No. And if it goes badly, I'll just turn my email off, go off of social media, lead a quiet life. New Zealand has always been my place. I'll just go down there and yeah, what can I say? It didn't work out, right? But I got a couple years left. I'm gonna eat a lot of seafood, climb mountains, whatever.
Sounds like a plan. Let's finish with this multiple choice question. Okay, so Paul says simply this: your best estimate or guess, multiple choice. What does humanity on Earth look like in 2 years? Let me go through the four, okay? A. Nothing more than new hearings, new witnesses, new documentaries and books, but no closer than we find ourselves
Right.
today. B. Capital D disclosure press conferences have taken place throughout the world. Religious leaders accept the new reality and look to ways to reassure their followers. C. Alien invasion has ensued. Millions of lives lost in the first wave. The survivors now prisoners of the new ET occupation. And D. World War III is over. 96% of the population of Earth are dead. Survivors are scattered. Not enough to go on. 1 year later, everyone's dead. We never found out the true truth behind the UFO mystery.
C and D are just don't even think about betting on that. Not a chance. B is the most likely. And tell me A again, real quick.
A was nothing more than new
Ah,
hearings, new witnesses, new
yeah.
documentaries, and books.
No, B is more likely than A. A is possible because that's what we're doing. And from the standpoint of some people, if they're comfortable with where things are at, then they're going to be comfortable in just keeping it like that as they buy time. The stall. In other words, the truth embargo continues to exist, but but the pressure on it kind of stays about where it is now, and we're just sort of in a standoff for 2 years. I'm afraid that's it's low. It's pretty low because there are there are real circumstances that are escalating this. Okay, the internet is escalating it. The podcast revolution is escalating it. The entire social media complex is escalating. The general media is jumping in. That's escalating. And the other processes are not stagnant. Most of what it's doing is leading to something else. And so the idea that it can sustain 2 more years of this, a barring of something dramatic, right? Again, if we go have a nuclear war, it's going to be put aside. Okay, nuke war, got to put that thing over here now while we get ourselves into an underground bunker and do what we have to survive. And then after all that's over, maybe we'll revisit it, right? Or maybe we just won't care. No, barring that, no, I can't imagine disclosure making it the truth embargo lasting 2 more years. I can't imagine it. But and let me tell you, let me be clear. I have talked about the prospects of the truth embargo ending for 30 years now. If I've erred, I've erred on the side of optimism. I've always erred on the side of the prospects are good, but there were times when they weren't, and so I was like this, but always forward. It's a keep hope alive thing. If you're an activist and you can't keep hope alive, you're in the wrong job. All right. So, uh, however, that said, and I can say this, I'm not making it up. This is true. I have never felt more confident. I have overstated it in the past sometimes. I've been a little too confident. I try not to ever kind of say a date. I always project possibilities, timeframes, things like that. But with the media, if you say it could happen, the media writes it would happen because that gets you more readers. Right. And that's just the way it goes. I get that. I have never had this level of confidence that we're close to this finally ending than now. We're just in another place. And that's been building for 7 years. And every year some more happens, thus feeding that sense. And so I can't imagine being more confident than this, really, without disclosure virtually happening in a few days. So, right now it can happen at any time. That's why I've been bringing up this scenario that I discussed earlier, right? This kind of quid pro quo basis, win-win kind of thing. That is one of the reasons why it's different than any other time. Nothing, no situation like that has existed. The Epstein scandal is like a mule. It's a mutant event. It's like, one in a, what do they call it when one of those storms that come up in the, it's a once in 50-year, 80-year storm, something like that.
Once a
Yes, this is
generational,
a
yeah, all that
once
kind
in
of
a
stuff.
1,000, 2,000 years scandal. I mean, this is huge. Uh, that if anything more happens, it'll be like, yeah, it's going to happen. But right now, I can't say it's going to happen any time, but right now it can happen anytime. The barrier to it happening tomorrow is as low as it's ever been, based on a whole bunch of circumstances that one could write a fine essay about if I could sit still for 20 minutes. And but I try to describe in this incredibly long interview, which I'm happy with, all of those circumstances together is why it can happen tomorrow. It can always happen the next day, even 1992, right? As I say, every president knew it just would have gone as well. It would have been much more difficult, much riskier, whatever. Now, that's not the case. Now it could happen tomorrow and it'll probably be just fine. We could polish things up a little bit more. Like the UAP Disclosure Act were passed. That would be nice. Does it have to be passed? No, it doesn't. So that's where we're at. So yeah, B. I'm going to give B 85%. 85% is B.
Awesome. Well, Steve, in the coming week, in about a week's time, we're going to know exactly where things are at after the hearing. It'd be good to get you back on to share your
Of course.
thoughts and kind of what happens and kind of speculate where we go from there. But do you want to let folks know again any of the sites that they can check up to check out your media resources, all that kind of stuff, just to finish
Yeah,
off?
sure. I'd like to do promos at the end. I'm constantly supporting the organizations. New Paradigm Institute is making some great progress. They've got um, a citizen disclosure project underway. They have a way for you to contact your members of Congress. Of course, Danny is going to be out here again very soon. He's very much involved in everything on the Hill because Danny Sheehan is a legend and he's key. So, and they're a big operation. They need big funding. I don't. So, if if you got into crypto early, support the New Paradigm Institute. Soul Foundation is very important. UAP Disclosure Fund just merged with two other organizations. Now they have divided up into UAP Disclosure Fund 501c3, UAP Disclosure Action Fund 501c4. And that's important. There is another major event that has been announced with a website that is supposed to take place in December, and that is the State of the World Forum. This is a big deal, multi-million-dollar project, and it is reigniting a very profound series of events from the 1990s, 1995, I think 2004. State of the World Forums. Go back there. You don't find much on the internet, but these were post World War II major events where heads of state and high level people from all over the world came together in mostly San Francisco and eventually New York to talk about the state of the world and how we could make it work because optimism was high back then in 94 and 95 and 96. Didn't quite work out. Huge events. Well, the man who was the president of the State of the World Forum and the president of the Gorbachev Foundation at the time, which Gorbachev was involved in the State of the World, he came to him, and a lot of other high level people, after all of these years, 21 years, is going to start it up. And why? Because the reason those State of the World Forums were held back in the 90s is because we had this huge paradigm shift. It looked like the nuclear Cold War was the nuclear arms race looked like it had prospects to end. The fundamental Cold War with the Soviet Union, that was gone. The Soviet Union was gone, and it looked like we were headed towards an extraordinary detente where we could work things out, and we no more real massive threats of that level. But things didn't get handled well. Mistakes were made. And so it went south, but it was an extraordinary optimism time. I remember it well. And well, we're having the same thing now. We're on the verge of a major event that is going to create a potential for massive change and optimism. And so, with that in mind, he is bringing it back. State of the World Forum, scheduled for Washington, D.C. The website is stateoftheworld.forum. Okay, that's tricky, but there's a lot of domain names now. There's so many extensions. So that's in the works. And of course, obviously, more funding is needed there. I have a major conference I will announce soon. I'll be attending at the end of the year, toward the end of the year. And Paradigm Research Group is hanging in. When I realized what was coming, I made the decision last year a year ago, to convert to a 501c3 nonprofit. I didn't do that before because, as a sole proprietor and so forth, nobody can demand to see my files, demand to see what I'm saying or talking about. They just can't get in my face or whatever, which is fine. I should have done it sooner, though. It was a mistake, but whatever. So I converted to a 501c3 nonprofit so that I can accept tax deductible funding. I don't need millions, but I need tens of thousands. There's a donation section on my site right up in the front. You can find it, who will donate, and it's a pretty nice donation module. The project I want to do is kind of like the State of the World Forum. The last X conference I held was 2010. I'd done 6 of them. They went very well. That's where I gave out all those awards up there. I get a bunch of them. And I want to now, it's time for 2026. So I want to do a 7th X conference that will then hold one every year going forward, hopefully in the post-disclosure era. X conference 2026, tight, well-focused conference at the National Press Club, which requires about $20,000 in advance money to secure the dates. If you want that date, you got to put the money down. They can reimburse if you cancel, but still, you have to put it down to secure the date. It's a barrier I simply cannot jump over on my own. So I need about 20,000 in donations. As soon as I have that, I will lock those dates down. And that's my major projects. But in the meantime, I'm helping Danny Sheehan and New Paradigm Institute. I'm helping the State of the World Forum, and continue to do all the podcasts I can. I'll also do any of the conferences and so forth. And I'm helping work with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, founded by myself and Dan Harari in LA, which is a year on and doing great. We're up to 227 founding members, Hollywood or film people or content people, as well as UAP people that are involved in these things. I mean, they're serious players. So they can connect with each other. It's a free networking operation. They can just connect with each other, create content, do deals, make lots of money. HDA is not a part of that, and it's growing. And so people that have credentials in the film or content creating industry, or which includes podcasts, by the way, or people that have really, pretty invested a lot of time and are involved substantively in the UAP issue, contact me or Dan on the website, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, and you could become a founding member as we grow. So that's kind of a good thing. That's one of the things I've been very pleased about. And there's other organizations forming. I can't keep up. I hope to put out an update, PRG update soon. You can subscribe to my updates at the website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and put out a kind of a long compilation of all the stuff that's in play now, and then with links, so you can kind of quickly have a giant Chinese menu stuff to check into. I've been wanting to do that, but it's been hard to really focus lately. But that's coming. So those are my promos for today, and anybody wants to contact me, I'm very accessible. Call me, email me. The contact information is on the website.
Awesome. And thank you again, Steve, for your time. You've been very generous, as always. And folks, start sending in your questions now for Steve for after the hearings. And of course, when those happen, there'll be plenty of shows happening that week, I'm sure, across the interweb, not only on this podcast as well, where you'll see Steve.
And in particular, because I love the country. If somebody can put together a real good speaking venue for me in the UK, I'm there, baby. Right? Definitely.
Listen, I'm happy to facilitate that stuff if people want to get involved. I'll tell the story soon, I think, actually, because unless the gentleman's listening who almost organised it last time and wants to try it for a third time, but hey ho, yeah, I think the UK is badly lacking in a good quality, large scale event that perhaps you get in the United States that we don't get outside of the US. So
let me just say this: we have some big events here. The UK has had plenty of conferences over the years, and they've been pretty good. Okay, and certainly they have speaking events. The population is less; can't quite do the large ones, but they're great. I did many of them, but it's been a while, right? And so, but what I'm really looking for is, because I've got the fun PRG, is there are now some extremely broad, as you know, for the last 3 hours, there's some extremely broad, complex discussions that you can have. It's easy to fill up a 3 hour presentation with a break in the middle covering all of this stuff. And it's great to do podcasts, but I think now we're at a point where large audiences are possible, or it's possible to get 500 or 1,000 people to come to a significant venue to hear this stuff firsthand and ask questions. The level of awareness and interest and the excitement is unparalleled. And that's what I do. I mean, I speak. I don't write research books. Okay, I pretty much speak and have a website. I've given more interviews on this subject than anybody else, including the legends. God bless them, because that's all I do for 30 years. And of course, I couldn't have reached that level without the podcast revolution, because a lot of the people that did a lot of interviews was before they passed before the podcast revolution got started. And so
Yes.
it's not fair. It's not fair. But and I can walk out on a stage with 1,000 people without a script, and I think present this stuff, and that's my strength. But in order to really use your strength, you need to have a stage to stand on and an audience to be there, and then ticket it and share revenues. Everybody wins, and everything will go to my nonprofit. I mean, it'll go right into the work. I'm not in business. So, and the UK would be a good place to start, because I've been there many times and spoken many times. But I'm also looking to put together, though I haven't promoted it too much yet, a full speaking tour of Europe, like I did in 2008, which I think was 16 countries, 18 cities, something like that. It was tough. It'll be a lot easier this time, but I'll tell you, it was rough back then. But still, it was incredibly wonderful. I made some great acquaintances, and I was hoping to be able to come back much sooner. But as you know, the issue started moving, started to kind of get off in the woods for a while, and get delayed, and so forth. But now it's time to jump back in big time. So thanks for letting me say that. All right, my friend, I got to go.
It's all right.
Until next time, ad astra.